Chapter 235. Wu Ming and the Last King once again began their hand-to-hand combat. The Last King's divine sword of salvation was surrounded by lightning. Each of his attacks contained the lightning of salvation. Each of the Last King's attacks contained supreme power. Wu Ming blocked the attacks with his sacred sword. Each of the attacks gave Wu Ming immense pressure. In the ancient times, I killed the God-slayer with my own strength and the ancient agreement. The Last King began to tell the story as he fought Wu Ming. However, since my information was exposed, it became harder and harder to kill the God-slayer, the Last King lamented. After that, the gods gave me some of their god relics. The Last King kept swinging the divine sword of salvation at Wu Ming while Wu Ming blocked the attacks with his sacred sword. He continued to listen to the Last King's story. Every time I killed a god-slayer, the gods would give me their god relics. Just like that, I have almost all of the gods' god relics. The Last King swung the divine sword of salvation hard, forcing Wu Ming to retreat. Wu Ming, who was holding his sword with both hands, sank deep into the ground. Deep scratches were left on the ground as he was forced to retreat. The combination of these god relics formed the Manchala formation. It's the divine sword of salvation with supreme power. The Last King pointed the divine sword at Wu Ming again as soon as he was done speaking. Zzz, 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 the lightning of salvation continued to surge on the divine blade of salvation. Subsequently, the lightning of salvation was shot at Wu Ming like a bullet by the divine sword of salvation. Dong! A thunderous explosion was heard. The lightning of salvation hit Wu Ming accurately. However, the Last King frowned. With the support of the ancient agreement, he could clearly sense that Wu Ming was not dead because the power in the Last King's body did not diminish. Moreover, the Last King did not believe that Wu Ming would be killed so easily. As expected, the glow of the sacred sword was revealed as soon as the dust from the explosion dissipated. The divine sword is indeed powerful. Unfortunately, my sacred sword is not weak either. Wu Ming said. A relic-level mana gathered on the sacred sword that he was holding. The sacred sword shone brightly. The Last King looked at Wu Ming cautiously as he thought that Wu Ming was going to activate his relic. A large amount of mana was attached to the sacred sword, forming a layer of mana blade that was 3 meters tall. Subsequently, Wu Ming swung it. Although Wu Ming and the Last King were fighting by the sea, the Last King was the Last King, the sea level began to drop. Putting aside the fact that Alice and the others were trying their best to stabilize the spirit vein, the water source near Wu Ming and the Last King was either evaporated by the Last King's passive attack or by the mana or skills released during their battle. Therefore, there was no longer a trace of water in the area. The Last King waved his divine blade of salvation, and the thunder of salvation flashed, cancelling out Wu Ming's huge blade of mana. Fear the one with wings. Evil people and powerful people are all afraid of me with wings. My wings will bring you a curse. Evil people can't hit me. The moment he heard the words, the Last King felt that his eyes were dazzled. Wu Ming instantly teleported in front of the Last King. Wu Ming raised the 3 meters tall mana blade and swung it at the Last King. The Last King had dynamic vision and captured Wu Ming's movements. However, being able to capture it didn't mean that he could react. The speed was so fast that it was suffocating. The heat on the mana blade was comparable to the previous Excalibur. There was no doubt that if the Last King was hit by this sword, he would be seriously injured even if he didn't die. The definition of a relic was to inject mana into the relic and shout the relic's true name to release the power contained in the relic. However, Wu Ming was thinking that if the Holy Sword was infused with magic comparable to the Holy Sword's noble phantasm without calling out the noble phantasm's true name, would the power of a Holy Sword without releasing its true name be comparable to the power of a noble phantasm? There was no doubt that Wu Ming's method was successful at the moment. Wu Ming first used mana and added a layer of 3 meters tall mana blade on the Holy Sword to expand the attack range of the Holy Sword. Then, Wu Ming compressed the mana used to release a relic into the mana blade on the outer layer of the Holy Sword. The outer layer of the mana blade was successfully transformed into a normal attack that was comparable to the release of a relic. Swoosh! With the skills and dynamic vision that he had gained from fighting countless god slayers since ancient times, the last king successfully dodged Wu Ming's fatal attack. Boom! The last king dodged, but the price was that the ground suffered another large-scale destruction. The entire coast cracked open like a turtle, and then it shattered. Now, the entire ground level had been lowered, although it was caused by man-made physics. The 3 meters tall mana blade that was attached to the outer layer of the holy sword disappeared after cracking the ground. With just one attack, the mana attached to the holy sword that was comparable to a relic was instantly consumed. Although this move was quite powerful, the consumption of mana was also visible to the naked eye. Therefore, it was estimated that this move could only be used by Wu Ming. The relic was the trump card of the servant, the decisive weapon that changed the outcome of the battle. Therefore, the relic could not be used lightly. In the ordinary Holy Grail war, generally speaking, the servant only had one relic, but there were many servants who had multiple relics. For the servants whose magic attribute was D level or below, releasing a relic would almost exhaust the servant's mana. If it was a C-level servant, it would be in a dangerous state. When the relic was released, if it did not achieve the expected effect, or if the opponent did not die, the servant who could not release the relic without mana was basically dead. Of course, there were also servants whose noble phantoms did not consume much mana, but that was a minority, and this kind of servant basically had a fatal weakness, so let's not talk about it for now. Then, Wu Ming released his own mana and attached it to the holy sword. The last king also captured the entire process, which took less than 0.1 seconds. None of the servants could use their noble phantoms with a gap of 0.1 seconds, and it was unlikely that any servant could use their noble phantoms for more than 10 times in a row. Even if there were multiple relics, it was not necessarily the case. And there is no servant with enough mana to support all of this. Wu Ming, who was in the state of lightning speed, turned in an instant and slashed at the last king. Clang! The last king, who was prepared, caught Wu Ming's attack, and then immediately bounced off Wu Ming. Immediately, the last king raised the Sword of Salvation, and the Sword of Salvation emitted a dazzling light. Light of Salvation, eliminate the filth. In an instant, the lightning speed and mana blade on Wu Ming disappeared. Chapter 236. So that's how it is. Is this also one of the uses of the Blade of Salvation? Wu Ming, who exited the seraphic speed state, held the holy sword in his hand and looked at the last king. You're right. The Blade of Salvation has the lightning of salvation that can purify everything in the world. This light of salvation is another use of the lightning of salvation. After sacrificing the attack, although the light of salvation doesn't cause any damage, it can purify a series of negative effects and even eliminate the enemy's power boost. It has an extremely powerful advantage. The last king held the Blade of Salvation with a calm face. Don't say that I'm cheating. King of Disobedience, this is also a use of the Blade of Salvation. In this regard, Wu Ming shook his head. This is also your power. Of course, I won't say anything, but Wu Ming has already noticed the weakness of the light of salvation. As long as the light of salvation doesn't reach, then it can't remove the enemy's power boost. With that, Wu Ming began to chant a new language. Although that's the case, as long as I cover my body with the light of salvation, you won't be able to get close to me. But then, you won't be able to attack, right? Wu Ming's rebuttal left the last king speechless. It can't be helped. The light of salvation is so powerful, but because of this, it must have a limit. If that's the case, then I'll use this. With that, the last king took out a metal disc covered with 2 golden sword-shaped runes. That was the authority of the last king that Guinevere has been holding, the arrowhead disc. The moment the last king finished speaking, the arrowhead disc emitted a light. The golden sword runes flashed and turned into 2 figures that flew out from it. I didn't expect to see you again, King of Disobedience. Last time, I was completely defeated. I didn't expect to see you here. I, old son, didn't have enough last time. One of them was a handsome golden-haired youth riding a Pegasus. The other was a golden-haired monkey king standing on a golden cloud and wearing golden chainmail. Perseus, son Wukong. Wuming was now completely sure of the arrowhead's ability. Ever since Guinevere had absorbed Perseus, whom Wuming had killed, into the Disk of Light for the first time, Wuming had been wondering if the Disk of Light could revive the dead god of steel for its own use, since it could absorb them. This was the result. The arrowhead's disk is my omnipotent weapon. Don't say that I'm bullying you, the king of disobedience. Then, the last king spoke to Perseus and the great sage, heaven's equal. My compatriot, the proud steel, please lend me a hand. Perseus waved his long robe and got down from the white heavenly horse. He took out the weapon at his waist. There's nothing we can do about it. After all, the comrade before us is very powerful. Sun Wukong scratched his ears and smiled. Since you're willing to give me a chance to kill my enemy, I don't mind helping you. Then, Sun Wukong took out the Jingu Bang from his ear. Wuming carefully observed the two resurrected gods. He did not believe that the last king's Disk of Light could revive them completely. Then, Sun Wukong and Perseus rushed toward Wuming. Sun Wukong arrived at Wuming's side first with lightning speed. The Jingu Bang that weighed 13,500 pounds was aimed at Wuming's head. Clank! Wuming blocked with his sword. Then, Wuming released the Blade of Magic again. The Blade of Magic was used by Wuming again. Wuming sent Sun Wukong flying. Then, a few arrows that seemed ordinary but contained divine power shot toward Wuming. Wuming dodged and swiftly evaded. However, sizzle! Sizzle! The violent thunder of salvation hit Wuming. The last king had predicted the trajectory of Wuming, who was in lightning speed. Wuming flew backward and fell to the ground. The ground suddenly exploded. The dust caused by the violent impact buried Wuming's figure. Since you're looking for death, I won't be polite with you. Wuming's voice was filled with anger as it came out from the smoke. Lightning! 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 I'm the conqueror who can defeat thousands with white, tens of thousands with 1,000, and tens of thousands with 10,000. Now, please shine brightly for me who is on the side of justice. Give me divine power. Supreme lightning, increase exponentially. The long and short needles in Wuming's heart pointed to the 9 o'clock direction at the same time, activating the double incarnation state that would be unavailable for a while after using it. Countless lightning bolts as thick as buckets rushed out of the dust. One of the lightning bolts instantly arrived in front of the king closest to Wuming. That was Sun Wukong. Sun Wukong had already been paralyzed by Wuming's lightning aura after using Double Thunder God's incarnation. I am the one who crushes all the enemies and enmity between humans and demons. That was the God of Thunder's incarnation's amplification spirit, which could increase his power again. In an instant, countless lightning pillars with a diameter of 3 or 4 meters buried Sun Wukong. Ah! Sun Wukong let out a sorrowful cry. Then, the resurrected Monkey King turned into ashes. At that moment, the stone plate in Wuming's heart, which represented the 9 o'clock direction of Thunder God's incarnation, emitted a red light as if a machine overheated. The lightning pillars outside also revealed Wuming's figure. Then, Wuming looked at Perseus again. It's you. It's you. Perseus was shocked. After all, Wuming could easily defeat him before. Now, he had turned the famous great sage, heaven's equal to heaven, into ashes. Perseus was alarmed at this moment. I will deny the sky, deny the earth, the storm will destroy everything, and the shower will cover everything. With the wind that can continue to rise until the point, combined with this supreme divine power, I will make everything in the world bow down to me. In an instant, the two needles that originally pointed to Thunder God's incarnation turned and pointed to the 4 o'clock direction of Thunder God's incarnation. What followed was a torrential downpour of wind. The violent wind blew away everything around Wuming, including the ground, the air, and Perseus, who was standing not far away from the last king. The storm rolled up everything on the beach and even the dry coast, soil, rocks, withered grass, rotten trees, and everything was instantly crushed by the violent wind and turned into dust, covering the sky and the earth, falling like a drizzle. This included Perseus, who had a shocked expression on his face just a second ago. At this moment, he also turned into wisps of magic and disappeared. In just a few seconds, Wyrm killed the 2 enemies he had killed before. At that time, the last king, who moved because of the wind, opened his eyes, looked at the scene in front of him, and fell into silence. Chapter 237. Wyrm looked at the silent last king and smiled while wiping a few drops of sweat on his cheeks. Wyrm, who was in his human form, felt a little tired after using double incarnation twice in a row. The physical burden of double incarnation was not something that anyone could bear. Wyrm got his noble phantasm through his own noble phantasm. Before the noble phantasm was upgraded, the noble phantasm itself would be set according to Wyrm's specific situation. As the dragon of origin, Wyrm was a high-level existence. Although he was still a baby, he was still the dragon of origin. Therefore, Wyrm's noble phantasm had a great suppressive ability when compared with noble phantasm of the same level. Moreover, those noble phantasms had the ability to evolve infinitely. As a god's authority, Wyrm's noble phantasm was undoubtedly the most powerful noble phantasm in EX, it could be said to be the EX of EX. However, that also meant that the burden of using noble phantasm was extremely difficult for others. In terms of physical burden alone, if he revealed his true form, Wyrm was confident that he could penetrate the earth with pure physical strength. Although his physical strength was reduced in his human form, his body was still strong. Let's look at his magical power consumption. Wyrm, who used double incarnation twice in a row, consumed as much magical power as multiple godslayers. For a magician, obtaining the Holy Grail represented endless magical power. Even if the previous servant obtained the Holy Grail, even if he had been using noble phantasm, he didn't know how long it would take to completely exhaust the Holy Grail's magical power, and that was under the premise that the Holy Grail did not automatically restore its magical power. Take the Holy Grail made by Guinevere as an example. The last king used it as a primer to restore his magical power to its full state. Moreover, because he was standing on the earth, his magical power limit was still constantly breaking through. If it weren't for Wyrm being the dragon of origin, his magical power was almost infinite, and when Wyrm incarnated as a servant, his magical power storage was also EX level. If Wyrm's strongest stat was his magical power, it was undoubtedly his magical power. The level of magical power completely suppressed the sum of strength, agility, durability, and noble phantasm. As for luck, although that could be expressed in data, who could say for sure? All in all, Wyrm just used 2 double incarnations. At this moment, although his magical power was sufficient, that was the first time Wyrm felt his magical power was greatly reduced. For Wyrm, who had never felt a lack of magical power, it was really rare. Well, but it's not a big deal. I guessed it right. You are now weak, last king. Wyrm grinned happily. Although using the arrowhead disc can summon the dead steel, I have to give them a part of my power, and as my authority to resurrect them, they only have 80% of their power. If they die in battle, you won't be able to get back the power you gave them, right? That's right, that's why the last king didn't use the arrowhead disc. The arrowhead disc summons steel at the cost of his own power. After these steel died, they would directly return to the mythical realm with this power. Therefore, the power of the last king was weakened. And killing these steel can't get the authority because these steel came from the arrowhead disc, the authority of the last king. Killing them only means that the authority of the last king is ineffective. It doesn't matter. Even if my power is weakened, I still have the Sword of Salvation. Moreover, I am now enough to support the power of the Sword of Salvation. The last king said indifferently after waving the Sword of Salvation twice. But you, if I'm not mistaken, you have several authorities that you can't use right now. Wyrm frowned. Now, in addition to the incarnation representing Thunder God, which was in a red alert state, the stone plate representing Storm and Phoenix were also in a red alert state and temporarily couldn't be used. Previously, Wu Ming wanted to use double phoenix incarnation with Blade of Mana to take down the last king in one fell swoop. However, because he was too close, he couldn't react in time, and the light of salvation from the last king's divine sword of salvation shone on him. Wu Ming's double phoenix incarnation was forced to withdraw and entered red alert. However, Wu Ming now almost figured out the last king's routine, and he summarized several sets of plans in his mind. After thinking for a while, Wu Ming decided to implement one of the plans. Now, you have almost guessed my identity. Don't you want to use your sword of spirit speech? The last king said without sadness or joy. Wu Ming just smiled at that. Although I know your identity, if I use the sword of spirit speech, your light of salvation will become a problem. Manchala phalanx doesn't work on me, and the lightning of salvation can't hurt me accurately. Now, you can only limit my power with the light of salvation. So, I decided to take the simplest way. Wu Ming rushed to the last king. Thou hast violated the contract and brought sin to the world. On Sunday, the sinner shall be punished. Crush his back, dig out his bones, hair, and brain, and trample on his blood and mud. If I am the one who cannot get close to the darkness, I will follow the Lord's words and destroy thee. God says, human beings are sinful. God says, human beings need to be purified. Thus, the torrential flood is bestowed upon me. In the name of the Supreme King, I will grant equal relief. Wu Ming's inner pointers pointed to 5:00 and 6:00 respectively. Annihilation Avatar and Flood Avatar were activated. The sea, which was almost dried up because of the existence of the last king, suddenly soared. A huge wave of tens of meters high rose from the horizon, rushing toward Wu Ming and the last king at an extremely fast speed. Is this also a power? Looking at the huge wave, Razin said calmly. When the huge wave approached the last king discovered that the color of those huge waves was dark red, the color of blood, the color of death. That was the effect of Annihilation's ability on Flood. The power of Annihilation made the huge wave, which could easily crush steel, more violent. It could be said that if Wu Ming put Sun Wukong in this huge wave, the great sage, heaven's equal, would definitely turn into dust and disappear. Wu Ming suddenly exerted his strength and jumped to the top of the huge wave. Wu Ming was supported by the huge wave and looked at the last king who was waiting for him. Final king, the hero who annihilates the demon king, come and try to see if you can resist this torrential flood that is mixed with the power to destroy everything. Then, the last king narrowed his eyes. That's enough for the thunder of salvation. With that, the last king's divine blade of salvation exploded with a rumble of thunder, rushing towards the monstrous flood created by Wu Ming to destroy everything. Chapter 238. The divine thunder that contained the power of salvation and the flood that destroyed everything were removed. In an instant, as if the Big Bang occurred, a violent explosion occurred at the intersection of the two. After the explosion, the rising wave summoned by Wu Ming disappeared. However, because of the intersection of the giant wave and the divine thunder, a large amount of white mist rose. The white mist covered the sky and the earth, and soon, the sun was blocked. The last king's vision was also blocked. The rising white mist also contained the power of destruction, and the last king could not see through everything around him. So that's your plan. The last king couldn't help but smile. The white mist that contained the power of destruction blocked the last king's vision, and then waited for an opportunity to sneak attack the last king. However, your plan is too clumsy. You've exhausted all your tricks. Just wait for me to kill you, king of disobedience. With that said, the last king used the light of salvation from the divine sword of salvation and began to purify the surrounding mist. At this moment, a figure dashed out from behind the last king. Excalibur. Wu Ming shouted the true name of the noble phantasm, compressed the noble phantasm that was supposed to be a light cannon into the holy sword, and slashed at the last king with all his might. However, the last king's light of salvation was instantly activated, and the magical power attached to the holy sword disappeared in an instant, leaving only a sharp and sturdy sword. Boom! Puchi! Wu Ming's holy sword was caught by the last king with his bare hands, and a trace of blood was drawn from the last king's palm. Wu Ming's body was pierced by the last king's divine sword of salvation, and a large amount of golden blood spilled from Wu Ming's body. In this way, you're a general, the last king said without any sadness or joy. However, Wu Ming smiled. Pfft. The last king, do you think you've won? Wu Ming looked at the last king with a smile on his face. That's true. After all, regardless of whether you're the god of disobedience or the god slayer, as long as you're not completely killed, you'll definitely retaliate. As he spoke, the divine blade of salvation appeared with streaks of lightning. After all, I'm an existence that won't return until I die. Goodbye, my compatriot. The divine sword of salvation exuded an unprecedented light. There was no doubt that this blow could completely turn Wu Ming into flying ashes. It's time to end it. Wu Ming's voice came from behind the last king. Then, Wu Ming, who had been pierced by the divine blade of salvation, smiled and turned into pure mana before disappearing. This is... The last king was shocked, and he quickly released the divine sword of salvation. But before the last king released the divine sword of salvation, Zabaniya. The last king's heart was affected by Wu Ming's noble phantasm. Although the last king's heart was not destroyed by Wu Ming's noble phantasm, the last king's eyes suddenly widened, and it was obvious that he was affected. At that moment, his movement came to an abrupt halt. Slayer, Flagelak. A light penetrated the last king's heart, and the last king spat out a mouthful of blood. Pfft. A black sphere fell to the ground, turned into flying ashes, and disappeared with the wind. Walalala. Countless chains stretched out from the golden ripples, completely binding the dying last king. That's the slash of the war god's sword, Flagelak, the last king said. Wu Ming, who was wearing a black robe, slowly walked up to the last king. The last king, who had been bound by Enkidu, was no longer a threat. Not only was his magic power sealed, but the effect of restraining gods had also caused the last king to fall into a state of paralysis. He could no longer feel his body. Yes, but I got it from a human. Well, a very interesting human. Is that so? Feeling his life force rapidly draining away, and his unconscious body, the last king gave up on struggling. I didn't expect that you have a doppelganger authority that even I can't see through. That's right, the Wu Ming, who was pierced by the last king's divine sword was Wu Ming's dependent avatar. It was just a doppelganger, but that doppelganger had 100% of the original's combat power. To be on the safe side, Wu Ming also used double pointer on that doppelganger, so as not to let the last king see through the doppelganger. And the result was very successful. Wu Ming's black robe shattered and turned into a card, then the card shattered and turned into a little bit of magical power. Wu Ming first used Annihilation and Flood to cover up Wu Ming's dependent avatar. However, the last king used Lightning of Salvation to heat the flood containing destructive power into steam. Wu Ming thought that he might as well make use of it, and then use Create Green item to create Assassin Hassan Sabah's rank card, successfully hiding his aura. In fact, Wu Ming originally wanted to use Backlight Sword to kill the last king directly. After all, Light of Salvation could only seal skills, which Wu Ming saw from the previous battle. Wu Ming used Light Cannon, but the last king didn't use Light of Salvation. When Wu Ming condensed magical power on Holy Sword, the last king used Light of Salvation, the magical power on Wu Ming's sword disappeared. That just proved the limitations of Light of Salvation. After all, if Light of Salvation could seal everything, such as skills, noble phantoms, and magical power, then the last king didn't need to fight Wu Ming at all. He could just seal and kill Wu Ming directly. Did you see the limitations of Light of Salvation? Ahem. Yes, I can't seal or eliminate the released noble phantoms or skills. Only something similar to enhanced status or magical power can be eliminated by Light of Salvation. It was precisely because of this that Wu Ming thought of using the backlight sword that he took from Bazette, yes, took from him. When the last king released Light of Salvation and Lightning of Salvation many times, Backlight Sword was already triggered. After Wuming played with it when he had nothing to do. Ahem, he studied it when he had nothing to do. Along with his magician avatar, he successfully maintained Backlight Sword's activation state. Although there was no need to release the Backlight Sword, Wuming still had the attitude of helping Buddha to the west. He used the Backlight Sword to completely destroy the heart of the last king that had been damaged by Zabaniya. You lost, the last king, no, Rama. Chapter 239. As expected, you've already guessed it. Rama forced a smile. Rama, from the Ramayana, one of the two large-scale epics in India, appeared as the eldest prince of the 10 chariot kings of Ayodhya. He was the 7th incarnation of Vishnu. Among the 3 Indian gods, Brahma was in charge of creation, Shiva was in charge of destruction, and Vishnu was in charge of maintenance. It was the responsibility of Vishnu, the hero, to descend to the mortal world to save the world during the end of mankind. Most importantly, Rama had the experience of killing the demon king. This also meant that he was qualified to be called the hero. When Wuming saw the Manchala formation, he guessed that the last king must be a god from Indian mythology. When India was cultivating the secret arts, to prevent the demons from invading, they divided the area into circles and squares called Manchala. As the last king, the ordinary god of disobedience would not be able to take on the role. Therefore, the last king could only be from the 2 Indian epics, the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. Coincidentally, the last king had the Manchala formation which contained the god relics bestowed by the gods and Buddhas in the heavenly realm. In the Ramayana, there was also a legend of Rama obtaining various weapons from the holy immortals. Behind the last king, the one who bore the shadow of madness as a god of disobedience, was probably Rama's younger brother, the 3rd prince of Ayodhya, Rashmana. The bandaged man you summoned must be the white ape Nuaman who helped you defeat the demon king Rabona. This was also the reason why the bandaged man was covered in bandages and wore a mask on his face. Once people find out that the bandaged man is a white ape, the first thing they would think of would be the divine ape who helped Rama defeat the demon king. In that case, your identity would be exposed. Therefore, the white ape Nuaman disguised himself with bandages and a mask. He didn't even say a word so that you wouldn't be exposed. Rama, who was tightly bound by the Enkidu, did not say anything. His life was about to end. You're tired of being the last king, aren't you, Rama? Wuming suddenly asked. That's right. Whether it was from Rama's tired eyes at the beginning or the way he kept providing information to Wuming, Wuming could tell that Rama hoped that Wuming could kill him. This killing was to kill the last king, not Rama himself. Rama knew that Wuming was a god from another world. This gave Rama, who had given up on the identity of the last king, a glimmer of hope. That's right. I'm really tired of this life of constant battles. Exhaustion appeared in Rama's eyes as he spoke. Rama would not die completely after being killed. He had the absolute immortality of the strongest steel. The so-called killing of Rama was actually pushing him to the brink of death. After pondering for a moment, Wuming spoke to Rama. I don't know if I can free you from the curse of the last king. After all, I don't know anything about curses. After defeating the demon king Luobona and saving Sito, Rama sneak attacked and killed the enemy monkey Puli in order to save his own monkey Puli. Puli's wife cursed Rama because of this. Even if you save your wife, you won't be able to enjoy the joy of reunion with your wife. Being trapped in the identity of the last king and having to fight against the demon king on the surface, Rama would not be able to enjoy the joy of reunion with his lover Sito. However, I'll try my best to do so. After all, I hope that you won't wake up. Hearing this, Rama smiled in relief. I hope you can succeed, my comrade. Also, my former companions, please treat them well. Rama disappeared. Before he disappeared, he left behind a sentence that baffled Wuming. Rama's physical body turned into magic power and disappeared. However, the divine blade of salvation in his hand did not disappear with Rama. Instead, it fell to the ground. Wu Ming looked at the divine blade of salvation and fell into deep thought. On the other hand, Numan, Lancelot, and Guinevere were forced to separate from Zaisha, Sebastian, and Athena due to the flood that was filled with destructive power. Although it seemed like Wu Ming had taken quite some time to kill Rama, in reality, it only took a few minutes for Rama to be killed. From the time his clone attracted Rama's attention to the time his backlight sword was activated, Wu Ming had used his assassin relic to delay Rama's movement. One of the two powerful and distinct auras of Wu Ming and Rama disappeared. Almost everyone around them noticed it. As the fog in the sky dispersed, Numan sensed that his companion and master, Rama, had left. He spoke for the first time. "Has my lord been defeated? If that's the case, there's no need for me to stay on the surface." As he spoke, the bandages on Numan's body were torn apart. The mask on his face cracked, revealing a body of white fur and an ape's face. Subsequently, Numan transformed into a gust of wind and disappeared. The white ape Numan had returned to the myths. The moment Numan returned, a pike that resembled a pipette pierced through the air. "Damn it, come back here. Let's fight again." Zaisha waved the pipette in a rather irritable manner. Satya, who had originally wanted to take down Numan and make a contribution, realized that she couldn't catch him at all during the fight. Numan rode the wind. Regardless of whether it was his speed or explosive power, he wasn't inferior to Zaisha. Although Numan couldn't defeat Zaisha, Numan's harassment tactics and explosive power were enough to make her feel aggrieved. After all, Zaisha wasn't a patient person. Nearby, Sebastian glanced at the irritable Zaisha and shook his head helplessly. "Madam Zaisha, our mission is only to hold them back for Lord Wu Ming. There's no need to kill them." "Of course, I know that. But if I kill the enemy, Lord Wu Ming might reward me, such as a room at night." With that, Zaisha's face flushed as she fell into a fantasy. Instead of looking at Zaisha, Sebastian looked at Lancelot, who had transformed from the shadow of God into the god of disobedience. "Your master has already been defeated by Lord Wu Ming. Do you still want to continue fighting?" Because Sebastian's mission was only to hold Lancelot back, even Lancelot, who had transformed into the god of disobedience, couldn't take down Sebastian in a short period of time. Lancelot rode his white horse and held his pike. After a moment of silence, he shook his head. "I have already made an agreement with my beloved daughter. As long as Lord Villo wins, I will follow my beloved daughter and choose to follow Lord Villo." "Wise choice," Sebastian said, then turned around and left. "It's time to go, Madam Zaisha," Sebastian called out, releasing Zaisha from her fantasy. On the other side, Guinevere and Athena had stopped fighting. "Lord Villo, did Lord Villo win?" Guinevere asked excitedly. After all, for Guinevere, who had found his true love, awakening the last king had become an obsession. Therefore, between the last king and Wu Ming, Guinevere was biased towards Wu Ming. "As expected of someone from my origin of fate. A mere godly ancestor can only be attracted to you," Athena smiled at Guinevere, who was looking at Wu Ming excitedly. They all came to Wu Ming's side at almost the same time, but because of their previous relationship, they were divided into three groups. Guinevere and Lancelot stood to the left of Wu Ming, Zaisha and Sebastian stood to the right of Wu Ming, and Athena stood in front of Wu Ming. Athena looked at Wu Ming, who was holding the divine blade of salvation, and her eyes, which were filled with wisdom, flashed. Athena spoke. "People of the origin of fate, are you trying to replace Rama's identity and become the final king?" Chapter 240. Athena lived up to her reputation as the goddess of wisdom. She could tell what Wu Ming was thinking with just a glance. That was right. Wu Ming was indeed thinking of replacing the last king with the savior sword in his hand. Wu Ming had tried to destroy the savior sword earlier. Without a doubt, Wu Ming had failed. Guinevere had told Wu Ming that the savior sword could not be destroyed. Therefore, on a physical level, Wu Ming could not send Rama back to the mythical level. "If it's my real body, I should be able to destroy the savior sword that has the indestructible attribute," Wu Ming mumbled to himself when he could not destroy the savior sword. Wu Ming, whose roots had grown in the Moon world, was close to maturity. He could do things that were out of the norm. That's making a mountain out of a molehill. Therefore, Wu Ming had the idea of replacing the last king with himself. Rama is in a state of suspended animation with the indestructible attribute of the strongest steel. The savior sword and the last king are one. Moreover, it's a combination of the god relics from the heavenly realm. Of course, you can't destroy it, Athena said while shaking her head as if she could read Wu Ming's mind. Do you know the identity of the last king? Wu Ming looked at Athena in surprise. Meanwhile, Athena's snake-like eyes moved slightly as a smile appeared on her pretty face. Oh. Didn't I tell you that I know the last king's real name? Wu Ming was helpless. Athena's smile was clearly the smile of a successful prank. Subsequently, Wu Ming sighed and said, So, do you have a way for me to replace Rama as the last king? Athena put away her mischievous smile and put on a serious face. If it's you, I do have a way. However, you'll have to rely on your lover over there. Athena then pointed at Guinevere who was standing on Wu Ming's left. Wu Ming suddenly understood. I forgot that as the maid of the last king, Guinevere must know the last king very well. Wu Ming looked at Guinevere. But at this moment, Guinevere seemed rather timid. What's wrong, Guinevere? Wu Ming asked concernedly when he saw that something was wrong with Guinevere. Looking at Wu Ming who treated Guinevere as one of his own, Guinevere asked in confusion. Why? Why can you, Lord Villo? Guinevere was getting agitated. To be able to ignore your hostile behavior and continue to treat you as one of us, right? Wu Ming spoke the words that Guinevere found hard to say. Guinevere looked at Wu Ming with tears in his eyes. Lord Wu Ming, as expected, Lord Villo is still the same Lord Villo. No matter which world you are in, you won't change. Lancelot was wearing thick armor as he stood behind Guinevere and comforted him. Wu Ming felt that he could be honest about the other world. As for what Rama said about me being a god from another world, he was right. However, when I came to this world, I could be said to have merged with myself. After all, Wu Ming couldn't say that it was because he came to this world that this world changed because of Wu Ming and automatically added Wu Ming's identity into the myths. Wu Ming then smiled at Guinevere and Lancelot. Although I lost most of my memories due to some reason, I still remember you. Just like Guinevere, she looked exactly the same as the Guinevere Wu Ming knew in Camelot. The only difference was that one was older and the other was younger. Moreover, the Guinevere in the Moon world was also a magician who knew some magic. Just like the Guinevere in this world, they weren't good at fighting. However, Wu Ming wasn't sure about the Lancelot in this world. After all, the Lancelot in this world never took off his helmet and thick armor. Wu Ming didn't know if the Lancelot in this world was similar to the Lancelot in the Moon world. They should be different people. After all, this Lancelot's behavior is completely different from the Lancelot I know. Wu Ming thought and looked at Lancelot awkwardly. Is there anything else, Lord Villo? Lancelot saw Wu Ming looking at him and asked. It's nothing. Actually, I just wanted to ask, is the agreement between you and the last king that you will follow me if I kill the last king? Wu Ming regained his senses and quickly changed the topic to avoid awkwardness. That's right, Lord Villo, or rather, my lord, King Arthur, my beloved daughter, Guinevere, will return to the king's side as Queen Arthur. As for me, I will follow my beloved daughter as the king's Knight of the Lake and return to the king's side. I beg the king to promise. As he spoke, Lancelot knelt on one knee and kowtowed before Wu Ming. Guinevere also looked at Wu Ming expectantly. Queen. Lord Wu Ming's queen. Satya muttered with lingering thoughts as she stared at Guinevere. Guinevere stepped back in fear. Sebastian, on the other hand, did not care. After all, it was not impossible for him to have a few more mistresses. Wu Ming looked at Guinevere's young body and her cute face that was frightened by Satya. He touched his face awkwardly. After all, kidnapping a loli was illegal. Yes, it was illegal. Important things had to be said twice. Moreover, Wuming was more concerned about King Arthur's identity. Although the legend of King Arthur in this world was set as Guinevere's creation based on the Vilo, Wuming, who knew King Arthur, felt that it was strange. However, he had to accept reality. Get up first, Lancelot. Wuming adjusted his tone and spoke with the spirit of a king. As you wish, my lord. Lancelot stood up and wanted to stand on Wuming's side, but he was stopped by Wuming. Wait a moment. I haven't killed the last king yet. Wuming raised the blade of salvation in his hand. Guinevere. Wuming looked at Guinevere. Your concubine is here. Guinevere bowed slightly and spoke like a lady from a noble family. Wuming sweated when he heard the words, your concubine. However, Wuming subconsciously chose to ignore these details. Can you help me become the last king? Your concubine will do her best. Guinevere looked at Wuming with fighting spirit. It feels like I'm raising a daughter. Then, let's begin, Athena. Wuming stabbed the blade of salvation into the ground. Then, Wuming looked at Athena and smiled apologetically. Athena smiled and went to Guinevere's side and said something. Guinevere's face instantly turned red. Chapter 241. Athena left Guinevere's ear, glanced at Wuming, and then smiled at Guinevere. Although Guinevere's face was still red, he still mustered up his courage and walked toward Wuming. Vilo, Sama. Guinevere said softly. Yes, what's wrong? Wuming looked at Guinevere curiously. Even a fool would know that Athena must have told Guinevere some abnormal methods to satisfy her own bad taste. I will now send you the information about the Sword of Salvation, Guinevere said as he gently jumped, hugged Wuming's neck, and kissed him. Wuming looked at Guinevere, who had his eyes closed and his face flushed red. He felt the object in his mouth and hugged Guinevere tightly. There was no reason not to take advantage of it. He hugged Guinevere and began to pass the information to him. Sebastian remained calm, and Lancelot was even more so. Xiaotaya took out the handkerchief that couldn't be torn no matter how hard she tried. She gripped it with both hands and bit it with her teeth, looking heartbroken. Athena nodded slightly with satisfaction. Guinevere enjoyed this rare moment of happiness, but at the same time, Guinevere did not forget to directly transmit the information about the Sword of Salvation to Wuming through his lips. Soon, Wuming and Guinevere's heads separated. Guinevere's face was flushed, there was a trace of saliva on the corner of his mouth, and his eyes were full of tears. Guinevere was immersed in the intimate contact with Wuming and didn't react. Razan sighed and looked at Athena, who was smiling, and shook his head helplessly. Just when Guinevere inputted the knowledge of Sword of Salvation into Wuming's mind, Wuming's warrior avatar at 3:00 in his heart automatically lit up. That meant he could use the warrior avatar directly. With the power of my words, let the justice of the world appear. Such a spell was powerful and eloquent. It was the sword of wisdom that beckoned victory. Come, the golden sword of the power of words. After that, a golden sword that looked like Excalibur appeared in Wuming's hand. By the way, the Excalibur, which had been transformed by the golden particles, had returned to its original state. It had returned to the appearance of meteor silver. Wuming swung the golden sword and slashed at the Sword of Salvation. The golden sword cut through the Sword of Salvation. However, there wasn't any gap on the divine blade of salvation. What Wuming chopped off was the connection between the divine blade of salvation and Rama, who was faking his death. Now, Wuming, who fully knew the structure of the Sword of Salvation, successfully cut off the invisible connection. Now, you just need to attach your spiritual power to it. As long as you drive Rama out of the Sword of Salvation, you can control the Sword of Salvation. Athena said. In fact, the Sword of Salvation was the symbol of the last king's identity. Whether it was the Manchala phalanx or the Sword of Salvation, they were the trump cards of the brave against the Demon King. You are both Dragon Snake and Steel. You have the dual nature of Dragon Snake and Steel. You are qualified to inherit the throne of the last king. It just so happens that you, as King Arthur, are also qualified to be a brave. Whether it was the savior of Britain, or King Arthur, who was known as the last king because he existed at the end of the gods' era, he was qualified to be a brave. That was why Athena said, if it's you. Because if there was a god who didn't meet the requirements of the last king, even if he knew the method, he was not qualified, and it would only end in failure. Wyrm closed his eyes and began to gather his spiritual power on the Sword of Salvation. Be careful, after all, Rama is the master of the Sword of Salvation. In the spiritual world, Rama is likely to launch an attack on you. Be careful. Athena reminded with concern. Launch an attack. As if he thought of something, Wyrm smiled, and then completely immersed his spiritual power into the Sword of Salvation. Everyone looked at Wyrm nervously. Just a few seconds after Wyrm's spiritual power completely immersed into the Sword of Salvation, the Sword of Salvation suddenly burst out with illusory light particles. The light particles turned into a human figure, and it was Rama. Thank you, my compatriot. Rama thanked Wyrm, and then the light particles that formed Rama instantly shattered, turned into a little light, and disappeared in the sky. Then, Wyrm opened his eyes. Vilo, Sama, how is it? Guinevere asked with concern. In this regard, Wyrm didn't answer. The corner of his mouth curled up, and with a wave of his hand, the Sword of Salvation that was inserted into the ground flew into Wyrm's hand. Wyrm held the Sword of Salvation high, and countless lightning bolts burst out from the Sword of Salvation, as if they were raging in the sky. There was no doubt that Wyrm successfully took over the identity of the last king. Now, Wyrm became the strongest steel, the last king, and his real name was Vilo Thranst. Although I was confident that you could successfully take over the position of the last king, I didn't expect you to be able to drive Rama out of the Sword of Salvation so quickly. Athena said in a thoughtful tone. Wyrm looked at the goddess of wisdom who was lost in thought and smiled happily. Then, Wyrm said. Rama left the Sword of Salvation by himself. Leave on his own. Guinevere said thoughtfully. Lancelot didn't say anything. Left by himself? Sebastian and Zacia thought for a while. Left by himself? Athena repeated. Then, she instantly understood something. You mean, Rama is tired of being the last king, tired of the life of conquering the demon king on the ground. Athena combined her knowledge of the last king with the various situations in reality. Furthermore, Athena had secretly glanced at the last king from afar. With all these key points, Athena successfully guessed the reason why Rama wanted her to leave. It was because he was tired of her. As expected of the goddess of wisdom, Athena immediately guessed the reason when Wyrm reminded her. Looking at Athena's confident face, Wyrm nodded. Yes, it's because Rama is tired of being the last king and destroying the demon king on the ground. In Wyrm's opinion, a lack of fighting spirit was very fatal for a warrior. Lancelot and Guinevere both lowered their heads slightly. After all, in their opinion, they were the ones who insisted on dragging their former master into a battlefield that he didn't want to enter. Wyrm, who saw the knot in their hearts, suddenly said. Cheer up, my first knight. Lancelot was shocked. That's right, he was no longer Rama's subordinate, but King Arthur's first knight, Lancelot. And you, my beloved wife, don't let me see your listless side. Wyrm gently looked at Guinevere, who was still in Wyrm's arms. Guinevere looked at Wyrm, who was like the brave and fearless King Arthur on the battlefield, and his face instantly turned from gloomy to happy. Yes, Sir Vilo. Chapter 242. On this day, the weather was fine, and the world returned to its peaceful state. It had been a week since Wyrm became the last king. After Rama was killed by Wyrm and turned into the Sword of Salvation, the doomsday phenomenon all over the world stopped, and the temperature of the earth slowly dropped. Within this week, the magic societies all over the world joined forces to magically transform the global environment. After all, if nature were to recover on its own, who knew how many years it would take? It could be a decade, or it could be a few decades. After a week of hard work, the world's environment had returned to its original state. As for the topic of doomsday, brought up by ordinary people, the magic societies naturally used hypnosis to cover it up. Anyway, it had nothing to do with Wuming. Now, Wuming was lying on the branch of a big tree, leisurely enjoying the moment of peace. Athena appeared in front of Wuming without him noticing. You sure are relaxed. That's not how a warrior should behave. And this warrior even defeated the last king. Athena frowned, disappointed that Joshua did not live up to her expectations. After the battle of the last king, Athena returned from a girl to a lowly. According to her, it was to satisfy Wuming's inner desires. Wuming was speechless. This is called balancing work and rest. Wuming didn't open his eyes as he said casually. Athena rolled her eyes at Wuming, said a few words, and then left. Your lovers in Europe are here. After a moment of silence, Wuming opened his eyes. Lovers. Wuming shook his head helplessly and smiled. Because Wuming had turned Japan into his territory, Wuming naturally couldn't continue to live in the villa provided by the history editing committee. Sayako Mikasa, who had become the leader of the entire Japanese magic world, specially prepared a new residence for Wuming, but Wuming rejected it with the reason that he was used to it. Wuming returned to the villa. As soon as he entered, Wuming felt a sense of hostility. Guinevere and Alice sat opposite each other, smiling as they conversed. Erika and Liliana, Wanli Guyoli, and Qingqiu Courtyard retreated to the side as they discussed in a low voice. I didn't expect the maid of the last king to betray him. Although I won't comment on certain things, this is indeed a little too much. No one likes a traitor. Don't you think so, Lord Guinevere? Alice maintained her perfect aristocratic smile as she looked at Guinevere. What Alice meant was that as a traitor, Guinevere shouldn't come here to humiliate Wuming. That's not right, Your Highness Alice. Lord Villo is now the last king. I just returned to the king's side. There's no such thing as betraying him. Guinevere maintained his aristocratic smile as he argued with Alice. Guinevere meant that he was loyal to the last king. Wuming was the last king, so there was no such thing as betrayal. Besides, since Lord Villo is the king, it's normal for him to have physical needs outside. Besides, I won't say anything about the king's playmates. However, as the king's wife, I have the obligation to manage those who shamelessly seek pleasure in the king's house despite knowing that the king's wife is still around. After all, one should know their place. Guinevere was referring to Alice, who was just Wuming's playmate. Now that the king's wife was back, she should leave. Lord Guinevere, you're too much. I don't think anyone would want to separate a married couple who is publicly acknowledged to be in love with each other. Besides, the return of the ex-wife who ran away from home can't shake the position of the king's wife, Alice retorted. What she meant was that the relationship between Alice and Wuming was publicly acknowledged. Besides, Guinevere, who had left Wuming, couldn't shake his position even if he returned. Guinevere and Alice looked at each other with fake smiles on their faces. Anyone could see the strange atmosphere between the two of them. It was why Erika and the others didn't intervene in the matter. Seeing Wuming enter, Wanli Guyoli and Willina of the Clear Autumn Garden noticed him first. Lord Villo, both of them bowed slightly to Wuming. As for the reason for such a grand gesture, it would be discussed later. My lord. Liliana also bowed. Erika smiled at Wuming. Wuming shook his head with a bitter smile. Don't do that again. You know me well, so just call me Wuming like before. Guinevere stood up and walked to Wuming's side. My king, you're here. Guinevere looked at Wuming affectionately. Wuming turned his head away awkwardly. You really can't imagine the scene of a lowly looking at you affectionately. Even though it had been a week, Wuming still couldn't get used to Guinevere's gaze. Alice smiled when she saw this. She then stood up and gracefully bowed to Wuming like a princess. Greetings, Lord Wuming. Guinevere looked at her angrily. Looking at such an honest and elegant Alice, Wuming was not used to it. Ahem, why are you here? Has the disaster caused by Rama been eliminated? Wuming didn't directly respond to Guinevere and Alice's actions. Instead, he changed the topic. After a week of recovery and the efforts of various magic associations, the entire world has basically recovered. Only this easternmost island can't recover for the time being because of your battle with the last king, Alice explained. Wuming smiled awkwardly. Because the damage caused by Wuming and the last king was too extensive, Japan hadn't been fully restored until now. However, because of this, some areas were turned into scenic spots by the National History Editing Committee. Their purpose was, of course, to make money. As for you, Wuming, after becoming the last king, won't you affect the land? Erica asked. That's right. After inheriting the position of the last king from Rama, Wuming, who became the last king, should have Rama's attribute of causing damage to the land. However, maybe it's because my attribute is different from Rama's. After becoming the last king, not only did I not gain the power to deal with the land and the draconic serpents, but I also gained the power to protect the draconic serpents and the land, as well as the power to deal with steel. As he spoke, Wuming extended his hand. A light appeared on his hand. Athena, who wasn't there, suddenly appeared in the air. She laid on Wuming's body with a flushed face. Athena emitted light. Everyone present could feel that Athena's power had been greatly enhanced. However, Athena seemed to have been drugged with some human society's flirting drug. Wuming smiled awkwardly. He then removed the light from his hand and Athena returned to normal. Following that, it was a round of staring at each other. Chapter 243. Athena looked at Wuming, and Wuming looked back at Athena. I'm sorry, Athena. Although Wuming knew that the effect was strange, he had forgotten about it because he wanted to show off his power. Yes, that's right. I don't mind mating with you, but I'm afraid your lovers won't agree. Athena's blunt words caused the faces of the innocent girls to turn red. Willina and Liliana from the clear autumn courtyard blushed and did not say anything. Erica giggled, and even Alice blushed. Bo. Shameless. You pervert demon king. Wanli Guyoli's face turned red as he shouted at Wuming. Why would he agree? Wait, why would Lord Villo want to mate with Lord Athena? What about me? Guinevere said angrily. Wuming looked at Athena's giggling face and knew that she was making fun of him again. Fortunately, Wuming had put Sebastian and Shadya back into the staff of Ainsworgang. Otherwise, if there was another Shadya, Wuming would really go crazy. What's going on? Why are you making so much noise in front of our king? Suddenly, a female voice sounded. It was a young girl. The young girl had the face of an angel and short blonde hair that reached her shoulders. Two thin braids were placed in front of her chest. Her ample bosom and tall and slender figure matched each other, giving others an exceptional sense of beauty. At this moment, the girl was wearing a gorgeous maid outfit and looked like a capable head maid. Uncle, you're here. Guinevere greeted. That's right, this girl was the Lake Knight in thick armor, Lancelot. Yo. Lord Lancelot. Wuming greeted her awkwardly. After all, Wuming did not expect Lancelot, whom he thought was a man, to be a beautiful girl. Wuming still remembered what Lancelot said when she took off her armor. As the tip of my king's spear, I have the use of crusading enemies for my king. Since my king has no need to go to war for the time being, I will become your personal knight and take care of my king and queen's daily life. Then, Lancelot put on the gorgeous maid uniform that looked like a princess, leaving Wuming dumbfounded at that time. It's too noisy. Keep quiet in front of our king. Like a real head maid, Lancelot lectured everyone, including Guinevere, seriously. Uncle. Guinevere looked at Lancelot pitifully. Now that I'm our king's subordinate god, we have to follow his orders. Even my beloved daughter can't disobey, Lancelot said seriously. Alright, let's stop quarreling. Since everyone is here, I have something to tell everyone. Seeing Wu Ming's serious expression, everyone calmed down. Then, Wu Ming and the others came to the meeting room. Wu Ming sat at the head of the table while Lancelot stood beside him. The others sat on the sofa beside Wu Ming. Actually, I'm preparing to leave this world. What? Wu Ming had just finished speaking when the others were shocked. Everyone, calm down. Wu Ming waved his hand and calmed everyone down. I don't know if you saw it, but when I was fighting with Rama, we used a Numalish to shatter space. There's some black matter outside the world. Everyone shook their heads. Lancelot was the only one who nodded. I've seen the dark matter. It's indeed a shocking darkness, Lancelot said seriously. Actually, one of the reasons I came to this world is for the darkness, Wu Ming said. So, Lord Wu Ming, do you mean you're going to other worlds to look for the darkness? Alice asked. Yes. I don't know why, but I have a feeling that only I can solve it. Although the feeling was disdainful to ordinary people, for experts like Wu Ming, the feeling was often right. Wu Ming, are you here to ask for help? Erica joked. It's just a simple explanation. I'm just worried that you'll cause trouble when I'm not around. Wu Ming waved his hand. Then you can rest assured. As your knight, I, Erica Brantery, am always ready. Me too, my lord. Liliana Kranikar is always ready. I wish you all the best, Lord Wu Ming. Wanli Guyoli was looking forward to it. Do your best, Lord King. Grace of the Autumn Courtyard smiled playfully. Don't worry and go. I will help you manage your kingdom. Alice smiled. Ugh. Guinevere was reluctant. Damn it. She's speaking like a matriarch. If that's the case, I shall follow my king into battle, Lancelot said from the side. I would like to follow you, Lord Villo. Guinevere looked at Wu Ming expectantly. The darkness outside the world. I would like to see how it compares to the darkness of Mother Earth. Athena was implying that she would like to follow Wu Ming. On the other hand, Erica, Alice, and the others knew that they were not powerful enough, which was why they did not say that they wanted to tag along. After all, the beings here were either the god of steel or the godly ancestor, and Erica and the others were naturally weak as humans. Furthermore, being weak could very well be a burden, weakness was a sin. However, Wu Ming shook his head and rejected Lancelot's suggestion. No, even I'm a little afraid of the darkness. Before I investigate it clearly, I won't let anyone go with me. Wu Ming's attitude was unusually firm. Is that so? Since it's my king's decision, I shouldn't interfere as a subject. But I still hope that you can summon me in time when you need me, Lancelot said. Wu Ming certainly knew what Lancelot meant. Lancelot, who had formed a connection with Wu Ming and became his subordinate god, could naturally be summoned by Wu Ming to help. But Wu Ming might not be able to summon Lancelot in other worlds. I understand. As you wish, Lancelot. Thank you, my king. Lancelot knelt on one knee and bowed. Don't forget about me. With my wisdom, you should be able to do much better in other worlds. Athena tugged at Wu Ming's sleeve. Athena was Wu Ming's first subordinate god. There was no reason why Lancelot could be summoned but Athena couldn't. I can also help you, my lord Villo. Guinevere said, but he still felt a little guilty. Guinevere was a god ancestor, but he had signed a master-slave contract with Wu Ming and became a subordinate god. Hence, he could be summoned. For strength, he had Lancelot. For wisdom, he had Athena. Guinevere didn't seem to be of much use. Guinevere was afraid that Wu Ming would be disappointed in him. But a large hand covered Guinevere's head. I'll try summoning you when the time is right. Don't disappoint me. Looking at Wu Ming's gentle face, Guinevere felt like he had fallen. Yes. Yes. My lord Villo. So, Wu Ming, when do you plan to leave? Erica asked. I've decided to leave now. Wu Ming thought for a while and said, looking around at everyone. I wish you success, everyone said in unison. Yes, even if it's for you, I'll succeed. Wuming smiled happily. Then, the space around him rippled. Then, Wuming disappeared. Then, everyone, go to work for my king, Lancelot said. Then, everyone left the meeting room. A moment later, Angela, who had just woken up, opened the door of the meeting room and came in, rubbing her sleepy eyes. Huh? Where is my lord? I can feel his aura. Chapter 244. This time, Wuming didn't enter the space-time tunnel. Instead, he came to the outside of the world. Wuming, who had transformed into the origin dragon, roamed the outside of the universe-like world. A dragon tens of millions of feet long floated here. Looking at the translucent sphere that wasn't as big as his body but was still huge, Wuming sighed. This is probably the world of the godslayers. Although it was a translucent sphere, he couldn't see anything inside. After all, Wuming was right beside the sphere as soon as he came out. Wuming turned his gaze to the several large spheres not far away, as well as the other spheres in the surroundings and the countless spheres in the distance. Wuming's body told him that these were all worlds. So, where did the black mud go? As Wuming said that, as if in response to Wuming's words, a small group of black mud wriggled over from the other side of the Godslayer world. Wuming looked at the black mud warily. Then, on his huge dragon body, the sacred dragon mouth gathered the rainbow-colored origin fire. After the baptism of the origin moon world, Wuming also awakened an attack-type talent ability. The origin fire could be described in one sentence: nothing can't burn, nothing can't destroy, and nothing can extinguish. Whoosh! Flames containing a strange power erupted from Wuming's mouth and instantly sprayed on the black mud. Like wine meeting fire, the black mud was burned fiercely by the origin fire. Then, the black mud was incinerated in a moment and turned into pure magic power that could replenish the outside of the world. Wuming looked at the place where the black mud disappeared, looked around, and left. Wuming went to find the source of the black mud. In every world, Wuming was like a guest in someone's home. But in the space-time tunnel and the outside of the world where Wuming was now, it was like returning to his home. After all, the origin dragon was huge after reaching adulthood and could only survive in a place like the outside of the world. Wuming felt great as though he was invincible. After flying for a few minutes, Wuming came to a stop. Wuming looked at a sphere. Gazing at it, Wuming moved slowly toward it. Then, Wuming summoned the staff of Anziurgen from his body and 2 rays of light entered the sphere. The 2 figures just now were Sebastian and Satya. The world Wuming was currently in was the world of Nazalik. As it was dangerous to descend, Wuming sent Satya and Sebastian, who were still in the staff of Anziurgen, back to Nazalik. Of course, Wuming also left a message for them through communication magic. Now, I just need to find the source of the black mud. Then, Wuming flapped his wings again and flew further away. As Wuming moved forward using his senses, the spots of light around him gradually disappeared and the surroundings became pitch black, just like the black mud. Wuming tensed up. He had a hunch that he might be able to see his hometown this time. Wuming didn't know how long he had been flying. He only knew that he was getting colder and colder. After a while, Wuming stopped. A gorgeous mouth kept rotating, and the surrounding lights softly scattered. Wuming was excited. There was no mistake, this was the entrance to Wuming's origin, which was Wuming's hometown. Although he was excited, Wuming knew that he would return to his hometown sooner or later. This was also why Wuming was so obsessed with returning to his hometown in the past, but now, he didn't seem to care. However, there were drops of black mud-like substance constantly flowing out of this mouth. This was a huge scourge, and he had to solve this problem. Wuming's body told Wuming so. Now, Wuming knew why this black mud-like substance had an aura similar to Wuming's origin dragon. Therefore, this black mud came from Wuming's hometown. Wuming fell into deep thought. After much consideration, Wuming decided to enter the origin to investigate. And so, Wuming plunged into the entrance to the origin. The interior of the origin was not as chaotic as the origin of the M-Moon world. Instead, it felt like a dreamy universe. Wuming looked down. Wuming easily found the black stream of substance at the lowest part of the origin. Wuming didn't care about this for the time being. Instead, he continued forward, hoping to reach the center of the origin. Soon, Wuming arrived at the center of the origin. However, Wuming discovered that apart from Wuming's origin dragon, there were also the auras of other origin dragons. The auras of these origin dragons were so dense that Wuming couldn't help but guess what had happened. Then, Wuming arrived at the center, laid down steadily, and closed his eyes. Wuming began to act like the origin of the M-Moon world. However, this time, Wuming didn't just want to absorb the power here, he also wanted to get an answer. Just like that, Wuming's main body fell into a deep slumber. However, Wuming didn't notice that when Wuming's huge main body fell asleep, some of the black substance around him became restless. The black mud slowly gathered together and wriggled toward Wuming's side. A moment later, the black substance reached Wuming's side. When it touched him, countless lightning and holy light burst out of Wuming's body. Although the black mud couldn't be touched, it turned into dust and disappeared as if it had heard a miserable cry. Then, the lightning and holy light fused into Wuming's body and continued to protect him. Because he couldn't get any information for the time being, Wuming decided to experience other worlds as a heroic spirit. After all, Wuming had the habit of traveling and couldn't stand loneliness. Because the origin of the M-Moon world was also in this area, and Wuming's martyr's palace was rather special, Wuming easily transferred his consciousness into his body as a heroic spirit. In Wuming's martyr's palace, the white-robed, golden-haired Wuming opened his golden eyes. When he saw his current appearance, he came to a realization. This was because other than the identity of French General Sauterlec, Wuming only had 3 identities that he had personally experienced. The Connaught Silver Dragon, Sirinth. The British Silver Dragon, Vilo Sirinth. There was also a powerful being of Mesopotamia, the guardian of Uruk, the wise dragon, who did not have a specific name but only a title. At that time, it was after Wuming had experienced the Uruk that he was asked by Gaia Alea to enter this newly built martyr's palace. I wonder how they're doing. Wuming thought of Maeve, who had changed a lot because of him, the immature Artoria, and the tyrannical ancient king, Gilgamesh. They've probably all turned into heroic spirits. After the meeting, Wuming decided to take a trip to the world he owed a favor to. I wonder if Aria managed to attack that parallel world. Then, Wuming, who was sitting on the gorgeous stone chair, lost consciousness. His consciousness had already arrived on a certain card. Chapter 245. Winterwood City, a mansion located in the residential area. Meiyu woke up early, changed into a maid outfit, did some simple cleaning, and began to prepare breakfast. Rin and Osaka also came out from the room next to Meiyu's. Strangely, Rin and Osaka was also in a maid outfit. Sister Rin, good morning. Meiyu politely greeted. Good morning, Meiyu. Rin and Osaka yawned, somewhat listlessly responded. After Luvia finished washing up, she came out from the room. Oh, isn't this the maid Rin and Osaka? Oh ha ha ha, Luvia saw Rin and Osaka, and laughed like a queen. Rin and Osaka clenched his fist, resisted the urge to punch Luvia's face, and tried to maintain an elegant smile, looking at Meiyu. Meiyu, let's go prepare breakfast together. Okay. Meiyu somewhat helplessly said. Since Rin and Osaka entered Luvia's house as a maid, this scene happened almost every morning. Meiyu was almost used to it. Oh ha ha ha, oh ha ha ha. Rin and Osaka and Meiyu entered the kitchen in Luvia's 3 queen laughs. Soon, breakfast was brought to the table by Rin and Osaka and Meiyu. Luvia, Rin and Osaka, and Meiyu sat together on the chairs, and began to enjoy this delicious breakfast. Luvia tasted the breakfast, and her face was full of joy. As expected of Meiyu, Every day you can make a different country's breakfast, and it's so delicious. You're exaggerating, Sister Luvia, these are all made by me and Sister Rin. Without Sister Rin, I wouldn't be able to make these. Meiyu shook her little head. Meiyu is right, I really hope I can raise the salary. Rin Enosaka ate breakfast while gnashing his teeth. However, Luvia ignored Rin Enben's words and continued her conversation with Meiyu. Actually, Meiyu, you don't have to be a maid. Your brother helped me to collect the cards, so I should be the one thanking you. After Wu Ming left, Meiyu was brought to Luvia's residence. Because she remembered Wu Ming's words, Meiyu chose to become Luvia's maid in exchange for the right to live in Luvia's residence. Of course, even if Meiyu were to become a big missy, Luvia would not say anything. However, Luvia was even more optimistic about Meiyu now. Brother Wu Ming taught me not to take other people's care for me for granted. Meiyu shook her head and retorted. Actually, Luvia did not have to specially bring Meiyu over to live. After 5 years of Meiyu's teachings from Wu Ming, Meiyu could be said to already have the necessary knowledge for a person's life. Because of Wu Ming's request, and because Meiyu was still a child, Luvia wanted to let Meiyu move over. Well, after all, this is also one of Meiyu's strengths. If someone can also realize this, then I'll be much more relaxed. He. Luvia laughed. Pa! The knife and fork in Rin Enben's hand was broken by Rin Enben in anger. Then, Luvia thought of something and continued. I don't know how your brother is now. He said he would be gone for a few days, but now it has been 3 weeks. Luvia complained. That's right, it has been 3 weeks since Wu Ming left. Because of Wu Ming's help, from the time Luvia and the others came to Japan to the time when they finished collecting the rank cards, it only took them a week to collect all the rank cards. After that, 3 weeks had passed, and Wu Ming still had not returned. Maybe Brother Wu Ming encountered some small trouble. Brother Wu Ming is very strong, so he will definitely be fine. Meiyu said with a smile. However, although that was what she said, Meiyu's worries still lingered. Well, thinking about it, after all, he is that person. Luvia hadn't been idle in the past 3 weeks. Just yesterday, Luvia successfully found out Wu Ming's real name through the Eiderfelt family's intelligence system. Mesopotamia, the most mysterious legendary dragon in Sumer mythology. It has the closest relationship to Tiamat. It has supreme wisdom and thousands of magic tricks, and it taught the most ancient Yura Hyunryong. What a powerful background! Rin Enben exclaimed. Then, Luvia laughed proudly. Just Rin Enben, if it wasn't for me, he would probably still be in the dark. As expected, victory is mine, Luvia Sarinta Eiderfelt. He. You bastard, if it wasn't for you, I would still be able to find out Wu Ming's identity. Rin Enben said angrily. Brother Wu Ming is a Yuruk. Hyunryong. Meiyu repeated Luvia's words and lowered her head to think. After finishing breakfast and cleaning up the dishes, Meiyu said goodbye to Luvia. Then, Sister Luvia, Sister Rin, I will go find Ilya first. Meiyu changed into Suigyun Academy's primary school uniform, carried a handbag in her hand, and bowed to Luvia and Rin Enben. Be careful on the road, Meiyu. Luvia and Rin Enben both nodded. However, Meiyu began to complain. Sister Luvia and Sister Rin should be careful. Don't be like last time, because of an argument on the road and ended up fighting. Not only did it lead to a traffic jam, you were late for school, and you were even punished by the gem master to extend your study time. As Meiyu said, Luvia and Rin Enben's expression looked like it was the end of the world, unable to get up again. After Wu Ming left, Luvia and Rin Enben had a dispute because of the class cards. In the end, even a helicopter was involved. Of course, the helicopter belonged to Luvia. Rin Enben did not have the money to send a helicopter. Then, the furious Rin Enben chased after the helicopter that Luvia was on, and directly used some means to shoot down the helicopter, and took back 7 class cards from the unconscious Luvia. In the end, Rin Enbin called the British clock tower on the other side of the world, but was told that because the gem master could not show the spirit of cooperation, Rin Enbin and Luvia needed to study abroad for a year, and even the procedures were completed. As Rin Enbin crushed the phone that was hung up, angry and sorrowful cries filled the air. After that, Rin Enbin and Luvia became students of Suigyun Academy High School. By the way, because Rin Enbin's funds were depleted, and because he needed to use gems, there was no job that could provide a large amount of funds. As a last resort, Rin Enbin came to Luvia's house to be a maid. Then, I'll leave first. Looking at the two who were extremely weak, Meiyu felt that it was better to leave first. Standing at the door, Meiyu was not in a hurry to find Ilya, but instead took out a card from her pocket. It was an extremely special golden class card, on it was a drawing of a dragon, and other than that, there were no words. Brother Wuming. Chapter 246. The card in Meiyu's hand was the one that flew out of Shuoyu's residence after Wuming left. That night, the card flew to Meiyu's bed in Luvia's house. While she was sleeping, Meiyu discovered the card. For some reason, Meiyu could sense that the card was Wuming's. Hence, Meiyu had been carrying the card. Because there was no need to, only Sapphire who had been following Meiyu knew of the card's existence. Meiyu didn't even tell Luvia, Rin and Osaka, or Ilya. This could be considered Meiyu's selfishness as a young girl. Putting away the card, Meiyu went to Ilya's house across the street. Ever since Wuming left, Meiyu often hung out with Ilya. It was not only because the two were friends who had fought together, it was also because Ilya was Meiyu's first friend in this world. In short, the two had a very good relationship during this period of time. After greeting Sella and Ligurite, Meiyu went upstairs to Ilya's room alone. Knock knock, Ilya, are you awake? The sound of knocking on the door was followed by Meiyu's call. After waiting for a few seconds, Meiyu opened Ilya's door. As expected, Ilya was still sleeping. Walking to Ilya's bedside, Meiyu shook Ilya and called out softly. Ilya, Ilya, wake up. We're on duty today. As if she heard someone calling her, Ilya opened her eyes in a daze. Did you sleep too much, Ilya? Meiyu asked with concern. Ilya's confused eyes looked at Meiyu. Then, Ilya smiled. Big brother. Long time no see. As compensation, let's have a morning kiss today. As she spoke, Ilya wrapped her arms around Meiyu's neck and pouted her little mouth as she approached Meiyu. Sigh. Meiyu was a little flustered. She had never encountered such a situation before. For a moment, she did not react and was stunned in place. At this moment, Ilya also realized that the person she was hugging didn't seem to be Wuming, and she woke up. There was a moment of silence. Yo Xiaolan. Ruby flew out of nowhere and said to Meiyu's hair. At this moment, Sapphire also flew out of Meiyu's hair and greeted her sister. Good morning, sister. Then, Ilya yelled and ran away from Meiyu. Meiyu, I thought you were big brother just now. That's not real. I only dreamt of big brother. I don't have any thoughts about big brother. Meiyu didn't say anything and only shook her head when she saw the flustered Ilya who was trying to explain herself but ended up babbling nonsense with a flushed face. It's alright. If it's Ilya, I don't mind. Huh? Ilya, who was a little confused, froze on the spot. By the way, Ilya and I are on duty today. Ilya, change your clothes first. I'll wait for you outside. With that, Meiyu brought Sapphire out of the room and closed the door, leaving Ilya with a lingering look and Ruby with an infatuated blush. Shortly after, Ilya quickly put on her clothes and had breakfast. Then, she went to school with Meiyu. At this moment, a limousine appeared beside Ilya and Meiyu. The car window rolled down and Luvia and Rin Enbin's heads popped out. Meiyu, Ilya, I have something to ask of you after school. Remember not to leave. I'll pick you up. With that, the limousine left without waiting for Mayu and Ilya to speak. Mayu and Ilya vaguely heard something like, "Ah, we're going to be late again. It's all your fault. I really don't know when Sister Rin and Sister Luvia will be able to understand how to work together." Ilya sighed. I don't think the two of them can be together." Ruby ridiculed. Mayu fell into deep thought. Seeing Mayu like this, Ilya asked curiously. "What's wrong, Mayu?" Mayu reacted and shook her head. "It's nothing. I'm just thinking about Brother Wuming." Speaking of this, Ilya instantly recalled the morning kiss incident, in the morning. Her face turned red. "Mayu, let's hurry up and leave. Otherwise, we'll be late." With that, Ilya pulled Mayu and started running. Aya. It's good to be young." Ruby ridiculed. "Sister, saying this will only make you sound old. Lil Lan, I'm still young." In the afternoon, after school, Ilya and Mayu said goodbye to their friends and waited at the school gate. "Phew, I wonder how Big Brother is doing now." Perhaps because she dreamed about Wuming in the morning, Ilya suddenly said. "If it's Brother Wuming, he'll definitely be able to solve everything," Mayu said with some longing. That's right. After all, Big Brother is very strong, handsome, gentle, and reliable," Ilya said happily. "Ilya, do you like Brother Wuming?" Mayu looked at Ilya and suddenly asked. Like something? How is that possible?" "Mayu, you really like to joke." "Ahahaha." Ilya laughed awkwardly. Mayu looked at Ilya and didn't say anything. Ilya also lowered her head like a little girl whose secret was discovered by her good friend. Although she was just a little girl, she was just a little girl. At this moment, the limousine stopped beside Ilya and Mayu. The door opened, and a pair of hands pulled Ilya and Mayu into the limousine. "Ilya, Mayu, I'm sorry for dragging you here. I'll have to trouble you now," Rin Enbin said apologetically. After that, Rin Enbin and Luvia told Ilya and Mayu about what happened. Because the clock tower called and said that the ley lines hadn't recovered yet, they didn't reject the possibility of blockages or even cards of other classes. That was why they needed Rin Enbin and the others to use the ruby and sapphire magic attire that was supplied with magic from a parallel world to inject magic power into the ley lines. In short, it's because the ley lines haven't recovered yet, so they need to inject magic power manually, right? Mayu asked. As expected of Mayu. You summed it up in one sentence, Luvia praised. It's great that there's no battle. Ilya had a dispirited expression. As expected, even if she went through special training and her strength increased significantly, with Ilya's personality, she still had a headache about battle. Soon, the limousine arrived at a mountain, Yuanzang Mountain. After getting out of the limousine, the group advanced into the mountain. Soon, Ilya and Mayu, who had transformed into magical girls, followed Rin Enbin and Luvia to a large cavern. There's such a large cavern here. I didn't even know about it. Ilya looked at this place with interest. As someone who had lived in this city for as long as she could remember, Ilya was shocked. After all, there's a barrier here. Normal people wouldn't know about this place, Rin Enbin said. Ilya couldn't help but recall Rin Enbin and Luvia who had fallen into the bottomless swamp's trap. Then, it's here. Rin Enbin walked to an empty space and stopped. Luvia and Rin Enbin placed a series of gems on the ground. Then, Rin Enbin took out the earthen gift needle from his back. This was a magic tool used to inject magic power into the ley lines. He inserted the earthen gift needle into the center of the magic array. Instantly, the earthen gift needle that looked like a withered branch started to grow like a tree. Ilya. Mayu. Rin Enbin and Luvia shouted. Ilya and Mayu looked at each other and nodded. Then, with the earthen gift needle as the center, they each raised the ruby and sapphire in their hands and began to inject magic power into it. And when the four worked together to inject magic power, the card on Mayu's body shone with golden light and swayed. In just a few seconds, the magic power infusion was complete. And at this moment, an earthquake occurred. Chapter 247. Not good, this is the magic backlash of the ley line. The magic power comparable to a magnitude of 10 earthquake began. The few people in the Yuzhang Mountains whole were affected by the magic backlash of the ley line. The ground shattered, and rocks fell from the open space. In an instant, Rin Enbin and Luvia were lifted up by a huge rock. Sister Rin. Sister Luvia. Ilya shouted. At this time, Mayu, who was standing next to Ilya, moved. I'll go save them, Ilya, keep an escape route. Then, Mayu quickly jumped in the air, instantly arrived next to Rin Enbin and Luvia, and hugged them. At this time, several huge rocks fell, facing Mayu and the others. Rumble. The big hole collapsed, making a huge noise. Outside the big hole, a golden light flew out from the collapsed big hole. Ilya, Mayu, Rin Enbin, and Luvia fell to the ground. So rude, throwing a lady on the ground. Luvia covered her butt and said with a frown. It hurts, what's going on? Rin Enbin complained. Brother Wuming. Big brother. Mayu and Ilya shouted in surprise. A blond man wearing a white robe stood in front of Ilya and the others, it was Caster Wuming. Then, Mayu threw herself into Wuming's arms. Sorry, Mayu, I came back late. Wuming hugged Mayu and said apologetically. Mayu didn't say anything, she just silently shook her head. Then, Wuming looked at Ilya who wanted to throw herself at him. Are you afraid of me or what? Wuming said with a smile. Big brother. Hearing this, Ilya's eyes lit up, and she also threw herself into Wuming's arms. So, it's you, that magic backlash just now was also your doing? Rin Enbin narrowed his eyes and looked at Wuming. Wuming smiled helplessly. I did trigger a large amount of mana when I returned, but it wouldn't have happened if it weren't for the blockage in the veins. Wuming was right. As long as there were no blockages in the earth vein, even if more mana was injected, the level of mana backlash would not occur. You're right. Rin Enosaka turned his head away. Out of sight, out of mind. Speaking of which, Wuming, why did you suddenly appear in the big hole? Luvia asked a question that had some substance to it. Wuming looked at Mayu with interest. Mayu lowered her head in shame. Wuming smiled and patted Mayu's head. Before I left this world, I left a mark on Mayu. As long as I return, I will definitely be by Mayu's side. Mayu raised her head and looked at Wuming in surprise. Wuming could only smile. Oh, I see, Luvia said. But I always felt that you were a perverted siscon. Placing a mark on your sister's body is unexpectedly disgusting. Rin Enbin narrowed his eyes at Wuming. Wuming didn't mind at all. After all, it was just a joke. After all, Rin Enbin and the others were already familiar with Wuming's personality. They weren't the kind of people who would flatter big shots, which was why they were able to act this way. That, I've been wanting to ask since just now. Big brother, who's behind you? Ilya raised her hand and pointed at the figure sitting on the ground behind Wuming like a primary school student asking a question. At this time, everyone realized that there was indeed a person sitting behind Wuming. However, because Wuming returned and Wuming's body was blocking them, no one noticed it. Sensing that he had been called, the figure turned around and looked at the crowd with a confused expression. Eh. Everyone shouted in surprise, especially Ilya's voice was the loudest. Because the figure sitting beside Wuming was exactly the same as Ilya. Except for her dark skin and different clothes, she was simply Ilya herself. As if she had reacted, Black Ilya looked at Wuming with a different kind of emotion, then got up and quickly fled before anyone could react. Wuming looked at the figure with some worry, but in the end, he didn't say anything. Shuoyu Mansion. The house that hadn't been lived in for 3 weeks was clean. Although Meiyu had moved to Luvia's house, whenever she was free, Meiyu would always come back to clean up, so that Wuming could see a clean house when he came back. And Ilya, Rin Enben, and Luvia would also accompany Meiyu to clean here. After coming to the living room and preparing tea, Wuming and the others sat on the still clean cushions. "Thank you for your hard work, Meiyu," Wuming said while patting Meiyu's head. Wuming could naturally see that someone cleaned the Shuayu mansion almost every few days, and it was a comprehensive cleaning. "Thank you all for your hard work. Thank you for taking care of my sister. This is a token of gratitude from a brother." Wuming bowed to the group. The few who originally wanted to decline didn't say anything. Since Wuming thanked them as a big brother, it would be rude not to accept it. Hey, I've been taken care of by Meiyu a lot." Ilya touched her face shyly. "Being able to become friends with Meiyu and learning and growing with Meiyu is the one I want to thank the most," Wuming said to Ilya with a smile. Wuming had always believed that only people of the same generation could progress together. As an elder, Wuming could give Meiyu a lot, but he couldn't give Meiyu friendship. In addition, Wuming and Sapphire recognized Ilya and Meiyu as their masters, which was why Wuming wanted to make Meiyu and Ilya friends. Magical girls were one. This sentence wasn't a joke. It's not as serious as Big Brother makes it out to be. Although Meiyu is a little shy in school, she still works hard to communicate with other students. I think Meiyu is already working very hard. After hearing this, Wuming heaved a sigh of relief. After all, although Meiyu went to school in the previous parallel world, she didn't make many friends because of her personality. Meiyu's classmates basically only knew Meiyu and didn't interact much with Meiyu. This was also why Meiyu was so happy to meet Erica Ainsworth, who wanted to be her friend. Then, let's discuss the problem of the other Ilya. Rin Enben put on a pair of glasses that he dug out from somewhere. "Yes, that's right. Why is there another me?" At the mention of the other Ilya, Ilya appeared serious. It couldn't be helped. No matter who it was, they would be like this when they had another person who looked exactly like them. "Then, let me explain," Wuming said seriously. Chapter 248. If I guessed correctly, the dark-skinned one who escaped just now is Ilya. Hey! Everyone cried out in surprise. But, Big Brother, if she is Ilya, then who am I?" Ilya said anxiously. The others also looked at Wuming curiously. "Calm down first, Ilya." Wuming touched Ilya's head. "Of course, you are also Ilya, but Black Ilya is indeed Ilya." Then, Wuming looked around at them seriously. "What I'm going to say next can be regarded as a secret. If you don't want to get involved, you can choose not to listen now." Then, Wuming looked at Ilya again. "Of course, it's the same for Ilya. If you choose not to be involved, I will help you take care of everything." Hearing that, Ilya was silent. If possible, she really wanted to return to a peaceful life, but, I am the manager of Winterwood City, the head of the Enosaka family, and Ilya was involved because of me. Of course, I, Rin Enosaka, have the obligation to understand and solve it. Young Lady Enosaka said proudly. "Who do you think I am?" "I am Luvia Sarinta Eiderfelt, the next head of the Eiderfelt family. How can I run away from the problem?" Luvia said proudly. "I will bear Ilya's burden with Big Brother, no matter when." Meiyu said firmly. Everyone. Even Ilya now understood that everyone wasn't doing this for any other reason. They merely wanted to help Ilya. Ilya wiped the wet corners of her eyes, then looked at Wuming firmly. "I've decided, Big Brother, I choose to face it." Ilya couldn't let go of these companions she met when she stepped into the magic world. Wuming nodded with satisfaction. Although he had already guessed that this would be the result. "Do you know about the Holy Grail War?" Wuming said a word that puzzled Ilya. Is the Holy Grail War a war for the cup of Jesus? For Ilya, she only knew about the Holy Grail of Jesus. Although the Holy Grail you mentioned is also the Holy Grail, the Holy Grail War doesn't really mean that. It was true that the Holy Grail had appeared many times in history. Whether it was the Holy Grail found by King Arthur's knight Galahad, the Holy Grail in the first Sumer dynasty's treasury of Gilgamesh, or the Holy Grail of Jesus, they were all Holy Grails, but the Holy Grail War refers to the war for the universal wishing machine that can grant all wishes, am I right? Rin Enbin said awkwardly. Wuming couldn't help but take a few more glances at Rin Enbin. It seems that Rin Enosaka is related to this as well. Wuming continued. Yes, in short, it's a ritual. The Holy Grail War was initiated by Yu Sanzho. It was originally a ritual for magicians to reach their roots, but in the end, it became a war to fulfill their wishes. Wuming didn't say what Yu Sanzho was and continued. The 7 magicians chosen by the Holy Grail fought with the servants they summoned until only 1 magician and 1 servant were left. Servant? Ilya was a little puzzled. Let's put it this way, you know that the class card seals the power of the heroic spirit, so you can understand that the servant is the incarnation of the heroic spirit. I see, the incarnation of the heroic spirit. Ilya nodded. And the Holy Grail War was held here, Winterwood City. In the city we live in now. Ilya couldn't believe it. Don't worry, Ilya, the Holy Grail War will never happen again. 10 years ago, the upcoming 4th Holy Grail War was stopped. Under the witness of the clock tower, the Holy Grail War ritual was cancelled by the Yu Sanzho. Ilya heaved a sigh of relief. Thinking about it, with the power of the class card, if there were really 7 heroic spirits clones, this city would definitely be plunged into misery and suffering. The Holy Grail War requires a Great Holy Grail and a Small Holy Grail. The Great Holy Grail has always existed, just in the Great Hollow of the Yuanzang Mountain, and the Small Holy Grail needs to be artificially created. Mayo's expression was a little gloomy when she said that. Wuming naturally noticed Mayo's expression, took Mayo's hand, and looked at Mayu with a smile. Mayu raised her head, looked at Wuming, and after a few seconds of silence, she also smiled. Then, Wuming looked at Ilya. Often, the Small Holy Grail is an artificially created human, that is, the androids, and the end of these androids is usually death. Death, death. For an ordinary elementary school student, talking about death was a bit too much. And the one who created the Small Holy Grail is one of the Yu Sanzho, named Einsberg. Of course, Ilya understood that the Einsberg that Wuming mentioned was referring to her surname. Ilya couldn't believe it. After all, Ilya always thought that she was an ordinary elementary school student. Although she had mysterious parents, although she had 2 nannies who looked similar to her mother, although she had a noble surname, Ilya seemed to understand something. Wait a minute, Wuming, this is a bit too much for Ilya. Rin Enosaka wanted to refute Wuming, but Wuming instantly cut him off. This is the path that Ilya chose herself, and to understand Black Ilya, you must know this first. Wuming said rather sternly. Humph. Rin Enosaka snorted a little unhappily. At this time, Ilya said with some fear. Big. Big brother means, I am the Holy Grail. Yes, Ilya, you are the Small Holy Grail, and Black Ilya is the sealed personality of the Small Holy Grail. Wuming's words were like a thunderbolt that shocked Ilya's heart. I've checked your body before. There was a seal placed on your body. If I'm not wrong, the seal in your body has already been undone. As he spoke, Wuming walked behind Ilya, put a hand on Ilya's body, and checked again. As expected, the seal that Wuming came into contact with had completely disappeared. Looking at Ilya who was at a loss, Wuming smiled and knocked her head. It hurts. Big brother, what are you doing? Ilya looked at Wuming with tears in her eyes. I say, why are you so conflicted? Even if the sky collapses, there are tall people to hold it up. I am still here. Once it's over, there is still me. Wuming's words of, once it's over, there is still me, struck a chord in Ilya's heart. Ilya was excited and turned around to hug Wuming. Big brother, thank you. Wuming smiled as he hugged Ilya, forming an exceptionally warm scene. On the other hand, Mei Yu was a little upset when she saw this scene, but Mei Yu did not say anything. At the same time, Wuming also discovered something. By the way, Ilya, when I checked just now, I found that 2/3 of your magic circuit has disappeared. Huh? Chapter 249. Rin and Osaka and Luvia were in disbelief. After all, magic circuits were the foundation of a magician. Moreover, it was an innate foundation that couldn't be improved. It was like a person who was born with the governor and conception meridians, but for some reason, one of the meridians disappeared. The consequence was a great decrease in strength. Magic circuits? What's that? I don't feel anything, Ilya said in a daze. It's an invisible organ. It's like a channel that releases and stores magic power. The quality and quantity of magic circuits represent a magician's potential. After all, magicians with high-quality magic circuits and a large number of them would definitely be more powerful than magicians with low-quality magic circuits and a small number of them using normal means. The reason why it was a normal method was because many magician criminals had flaws in their magic circuits. Therefore, they used opportunistic methods to make themselves stronger than other magicians with high-quality magic circuits. Thus, they embarked on the path of crime. Moreover, there were also methods to transplant magic circuits. However, these methods were extremely rare or extremely difficult to achieve. Moreover, even if the magic circuits of others were successfully transplanted, there was no guarantee that there wouldn't be rejection. This was just like transplanting other people's organs. The body would reject the transplanted organs. If one was unlucky, they might die instantly after the magic circuits were transplanted. Rin and Osaka, who didn't believe in heresy, also walked over and grabbed Ilya's hand. He circulated his magic power and examined it. It's a lie. 2/3 of the magic circuits really disappeared. However, Ilya has always been by our side. She didn't lose her memory or anything else. How could Ilya's magic circuits disappear for no reason? Luvia analyzed. In response, Wuming brought up another topic. Luvia and Rin, take out your class cards and let me see. Although they didn't know why they had to look at their class cards, Luvia and Rin and Osaka still obediently took out their class cards. However, there were only 6 class cards on the table. What's going on? Archer disappeared. Rin and Osaka scratched his ears and cheeks as he searched for the missing class cards and said in a panic. Wuming, on the other hand, revealed an expression of truth. Based on our previous analysis, it seems that Black Ilya is indeed Ilya. However, everyone was dumbfounded. Wuming then picked up the 6 rank cards on the table. Let's take a look at these grade cards first. In the Holy Grail War, the ranks of the 7 servants included these 6 rank cards. Saber, Swordsman, with the highest attributes, Lancer, Lancer, with the most agile, Rider, Rider, with a mount, Caster, Magician, with superb magic, Assassin, Assassin, with the ability to hide oneself, and Berserker, Berserker, with the ability to sacrifice reason to increase one's attributes. Wuming picked up the 6 class cards and explained in detail. The only thing missing is an archer with a powerful projectile or even a powerful noble phantasm. Recalling that Black Ilya was wearing something similar to Amiya, Mei Yu understood. Brother Wuming, do you mean that Black Ilya is the materialization of the Archer class card? Wuming shook his head. To be precise, the sealed Ilya came out through the Archer class card. Everyone suddenly realized. That's all for today. I need to investigate some information so that I can fully understand Black Ilya's situation. With that said, Wuming touched Ilya's head. And you, don't think that you can do whatever you want just because you're the little Holy Grail. Ilya is Ilya, and this won't change. We won't change our feelings for you because of your identity. That's right, Ilya. In my eyes, you're still that reckless little brat. This won't change. Rin and Osaka said proudly. If possible, I really hope that I can leave a good impression in your heart. Ilya complained helplessly. Everyone laughed. At the same time, Wuming looked at Meiyu. Wuming's lips moved slightly as if he was mouthing something. Meiyu, who was extremely knowledgeable, naturally understood Wuming's lips. Wuming said, "You too, my little sister, Meiyu." At this moment, the different feelings that gathered in Meiyu's heart because Ilya was hugging Wuming had disappeared. Brother Wuming. Meiyu clenched her hands and placed them in front of her chest. She lowered her head and whispered in a voice that no one else could hear. Hey, by the way, Ilya, how much longer are you going to hug Wuming? You've hugged him enough. At this moment, Ruby, who had been silent all this while, suddenly flew to Ilya's side and teased her. Wah! Only then did Ilya realize that she was still hugging Wuming. Big brother, I didn't do it on purpose. I don't have any other thoughts. Don't misunderstand, Ilya said with a red face. Aw, you're not frank enough. Big brother from before was like this, and now big brother is like this as well. Shut up. Ilya's eyes were filled with tears. She grabbed Ruby and covered her with both hands. Wuming shook his head helplessly. Of course, he could see Ilya's feelings for him. However, Wuming only treated it as a feeling of dependence. He was just an elementary school student. How would he know about love? Wuming looked outside the window. It was almost dark. Therefore, Wuming spoke. Since it's already so late, why don't you stay for a meal? I've been away for so long. I don't know if your tastes have changed. No. We like everything you cook. Hurry up and go. Treat it as a welcome banquet for you, Wuming. This was the down-and-out young lady, Rin Tozaka, who was used to freeloading. Speaking of which, it was a first for the main character to personally cook for a welcome banquet, although it's a little hard to say, your culinary skills are indeed not bad. I, Livia Sarinta Eiderfelt, will make do with your meal for today. This was the real young lady, Livia, who was drooling. Really? I'm really looking forward to Big Brother's cooking. This was Ilya, who had an expectant expression. Stare. This was Meiyu, who didn't say anything and only looked at Wuming. Do you still want to eat omelette rice, Meiyu? Wuming smiled and patted Meiyu's head. Yeah. Meiyu nodded. All right. Today, I'll show off my cooking skills and make you a sumptuous dinner. As for the ingredients, Wuming indicated that the transportation gate could still be used. Just like that, the Shuoyu's family held a welcoming banquet with the person being welcomed as the chef. Chapter 250. The next morning, Wuming woke up the rest of them who were still sleeping. Because they had too much fun yesterday, they ended up staying at the Shuosuki residence. My head hurts. Did I bump into something last night? Rin and Osaka held his aching head and walked out of the guest room unsteadily. Damn it. I must have stayed with Rin and Osaka for too long. Is this bad luck? Livia also held her aching head and walked out of the guest room next to Rin and Osaka's. Ilya and Meiyu were already sitting at the dining table and enjoying the breakfast that Wuming prepared with love. Yes, a brother's love for his sister. You two hurry up and wash up. It's almost time for class. The two instantly rushed into the bathroom. Damn it. Blonde girl, do you need to wash up? Just pull your hair a few times and you'll be fine. You're the one. You're just a wild monkey. You don't need to dress up. Then, there was another round of chaos. Ilya and Meiyu sat opposite each other. Ilya yawned and was lacking sleep. Even Meiyu, who had always been energetic, was now feeling tired. Ruby and Sapphire floated beside them and chatted leisurely with Ilya and Meiyu. I told you to sleep early. Now you know you're wrong. Wuming teased. Last night, they started having fun when they were eating. Because they had too much fun, by the time they finished eating, they realized that it was already very late. Left with no choice, Wuming called Sila from Ilya's family and helped Ilya apply for leave. Just like that, Ilya once again stayed at the Shoasuke residence. As for Luvia and Rin and Osaka, because it was already late, they decided to stay. It can't be helped. Big brother hasn't come back for so long. Everyone misses you. Ilya ate her breakfast and her listless face instantly became extremely beautiful. Wuming smiled bitterly and shook his head. Then, Wuming noticed Mayo's resentful eyes. In fact, Mayu wanted to sleep with Wuming last night because Ilya said that she could sleep with Mayu. In the end, Mayu couldn't resist the temptation and fell asleep with Ilya. Speaking of which, when did the relationship between the two of you become so good that you even sleep together? Wuming was a little puzzled. It's alright. Actually, Mayu is very popular in school right now. She's much better than when she first transferred here. Ilya rubbed her head and smiled. After all, although Mayu had begun to take the initiative to communicate with others, due to the personality that she had cultivated from the past and the temperament of an ice beauty, there were not many people who could communicate with Mayu. You don't have to force yourself, Mayu. You're already doing very well now. Although Wuming wasn't by Wuming's side during this period of time, Wuming received information about Mayu through the class card with the dragon engraved on it. This was also related to the fact that Mayu had been carrying it with her. You don't need to communicate with others. I got it, brother Wuming. It seems that Mayu misunderstood something. Wuming hurriedly said. Actually, it's better for you to communicate with others more. After all, this is a rare school life that even I haven't experienced. By the way, Big Brother is also a heroic spirit, right? What's Big Brother's real name? Ilya asked curiously. Mayu, who was sitting next to Wuming, was also a little curious. Although Mayu knew Wuming's real name yesterday, she didn't have time to check the information. Mayu only knew that Wuming was her brother, and she never paid attention to Wuming's previous story. It could be said that Mayu didn't ask, and Wuming didn't say anything. If it's the current, caster, magician, class, my real name should be Hyunryong. Wuming thought for a while and answered Ilya's doubts. Huh? Hyunryong, is that a real name? I really haven't heard of anyone named Hyunryong in legend. Ilya smiled a little awkwardly. After all, she didn't know his name, so she was a little embarrassed. I can't blame you for this, it's just that Sumer legend is not very famous in the world. After washing up, Rin Tozaka, who was dressed in formal clothes, sat next to Ilya and explained. However, half of Rin Tozaka's face was a little swollen. Fortunately, Ilya didn't notice it and asked. Sumer legend? Is Big Brother from Sumer legend? The great sage who taught the ancient king, who has the closest relationship with Tiamat, the creator of Mesopotamia, and the most mysterious legendary dragon. Even the world's oldest epic, the Epic of Gilgamesh, has very little information about him. Luvia also finished washing up and sat next to Mayu. However, the side of Luvia's face was also a little swollen. Big Brother is so powerful. Ilya looked at Wuming with some surprise. Mayu, on the other hand, had heard the news from Luvia yesterday, so she wasn't too shocked. Rin Tozaka and Luvia looked at each other, and their gazes collided as if they were bursting with intense electric sparks. Now, Ilya and Mio were sitting across from each other at the dining table. Rin Enban and Luvia were sitting on either side of Ilya and Mio, looking at each other. Wuming sat on the other side of Mayu. Alright, if you don't hurry up, you're really going to be late. Then, Rin Tozaka and Luvia stopped looking at each other and hurriedly ate the breakfast that Wuming prepared. Then, we'll be leaving first. Ilya and Mayu, who had finished eating, said. It's rare that I'm free today, why don't I go visit you? Wuming smiled at Ilya and Mayu. Then, Mayo's smile gradually widened, and she nodded heavily. Okay. About a few minutes later, a golden sports car appeared at the entrance of Swaegun Garden Academy's elementary school. Although because of Wu Ming's superb skills, there was still a while before Ilya and Mayo's class. Ilya looked at Wu Ming with some embarrassment, then said, "Big brother, isn't this a bit too ostentatious? After all, Wu Ming's car was made by Wu Ming using Create Green item. Not only was its performance comparable to a high-level magic dress, but its appearance was also quite expensive. Once Ilya and Mayu got out of the car, it would definitely cause a commotion. On the contrary, Mayu was used to it. After all, Wu Ming was not short of money. It could be said that since Wu Ming adopted Mayu, Mayu had been living like a young lady. Although Wu Ming and Mayu often walked here in the past, that was just because Wu Ming wanted to give Mayu a sense of ordinary life. As long as she was with Wu Ming, no matter what Mayu did, she would feel happy. However, it was best to avoid unnecessary commotion. Then Wu Ming stretched out a hand, and several Lune runes fell on the two of them. "Okay, I'll now apply the concealment rune on you. It will only last for a few minutes. If you get out of the car now, others will only treat you as passers-by, and it won't cause a commotion. You're a great help, big brother." After thanking him, Ilya pulled Mayu and ran into the school. Wu Ming still remembered Mayo's confused face at the end, and he couldn't help but laugh. At this time, Wu Ming noticed a magical power. Wu Ming looked at the top of a telephone pole, and a dark-skinned girl wearing a rather revealing black and red trench coat stood there. Ilya. Chapter 251. Black Ilya, who was standing on the telephone pole, seemed to have noticed Wu Ming looking at her. She immediately bent down and jumped away. Wu Ming parked the car in a nearby parking lot and got out. Wu Ming went directly to the roof of a building in the Panicle Garden Academy's elementary school. Wu Ming had a feeling that Black Ilya must have come for Ilya. Sure enough, Wu Ming discovered Black Ilya hiding on the roof of the building opposite Ilya's. Wu Ming gathered mana in his eyes and looked at Black Ilya. Black Ilya was looking at Ilya, who was in the middle of class. Wu Ming could clearly see a trace of envy and unwillingness in Black Ilya's eyes. Wu Ming exerted strength in his legs and jumped behind Black Ilya. Black Ilya quickly turned around vigilantly. When she saw that it was Wu Ming, her expression relaxed. "What?" "It's Big Brother," Black Ilya said in a frivolous tone. Now, Wu Ming was even more certain that Black Ilya was Ilya. Although her tone was frivolous, Wu Ming couldn't be wrong about the feeling that Black Ilya gave him. "You're Ilya, right?" Wu Ming asked. "As expected of my big brother. You can see my nature at a glance." "That's right, I'm Ilya," Black Ilya said happily. Wu Ming could see that this Ilya in front of him also had special feelings for him. So, Wu Ming stretched out a hand. "Then, Ilya, can you talk to me?" However, Black Ilya chose to reject her beloved big brother. "Not now, big brother. Wait until Ilya gets rid of the other Ilya. That way, Ilya will be able to happily stay by big brother's side." Black Ilya said something that Wu Ming didn't understand. Then, Black Ilya suddenly jumped away and left. Wu Ming watched this scene quietly. He didn't stop Black Ilya from leaving, nor did he say anything. He just thought. After a while, Wu Ming used teleportation portal to arrive at Zelika's room. Wu Ming's goal was to learn all the information about the sealed Fourth Holy Grail War. After communicating with Zelika again, Wu Ming obtained the information. Wu Ming returned to the empty Shuayu residence. After Wu Ming sent Mayu and Ilya to school, Rin and Luvia also went to school. Wu Ming had said that he would try to get in touch with the other Ilya and told Rin, Tasaka and the others not to worry about it and to focus on going to school. That was why Rin, Tasaka and Luvia, who were supposed to take a leave of absence, went to school. Wu Ming sat on the sofa with a magic book in his hand. Zelek seemed to have guessed that Wu Ming would come back, so he prepared this magic book that recorded all the information in advance and handed it to Wu Ming when Wu Ming came. Turning the spellbook around, Wu Ming pondered over what Black Illyria had told him. Wu Ming didn't think that Black Ilya was joking when she said, "Get rid of Ilya." However, Black Elia seemed to want to replace Elia, so she definitely wouldn't do it in public. Elia was currently in class, so Wuming believed that Black Elia wouldn't do it. Wuming spent almost half a day memorizing all the information in the book. "Kalas, have you recorded all this?" Wuming asked. "Yes, Master, everything has been recorded." A golden dragon horn accessory appeared on Wuming's head. Then, Wuming's hand that was holding the magic book instantly ignited with white flames. The magic book that recorded the information about the sealed Fourth Holy Grail War was burned by Wuming just like that. If the magicians saw this, they would be devastated. After all, every magic book was a precious existence, even this magic book that could only record things was the same. Then, Wuming got up and walked out of the house. Near the Cluster Garden Academy's primary school. Just as Wuming thought, Black Elia didn't do anything to Elia in public. At this moment, Black Elia was sitting on a wall, swinging her legs in boredom, thinking about something. Wuming walked over. More importantly, Wuming was holding 2 ice creams in his hand. "Isn't this Elia? What a coincidence, do you want an ice cream?" Wuming looked at Black Elia with a smile. "Big brother, are you here to stop me? I said that after I get rid of Elia, I'll listen to you obediently." Black Elia looked at Wuming with a vigilant smile. "I didn't say I was going to stop you. I just happened to run into you, and I happened to buy an extra ice cream, so I wanted to invite you to eat it with me. Besides, you can't do anything right now, right? Why don't you accept my invitation?" Wuming looked at Black Elia with the same kind expression as before. Seeing that Big Brother is so sincere, I'll accept the invitation." After thinking for a while, Black Elia jumped off the wall and came to Wuming's side with a smile. "Let's go sit in the park," Wuming suggested. Black Elia naturally nodded. Wuming and Black Elia sat down on the chairs in the nearby park. Because it wasn't the weekend, the students basically had to go to class and work. Hence, the small park was empty. "Here, this is strawberry flavored." Wuming put the pink ice cream in his hand in front of Black Elia. Wuming knew Elia very well. She often came to freeload on his food. She usually liked strawberry-flavored ice cream. Hence, Wuming guessed that Black Elia also liked strawberry-flavored ice cream. "You're so considerate, Big Brother, you even know what kind of ice cream I like to eat. You don't have any thoughts about me, do you?" Black Elia took off her clothes slightly and pretended to be seductive as she spoke. Smack. "It hurts." Black Elia hugged her little head that Wuming had hit with his karate chop. Tears welled up in the corners of her eyes. Wuming caught the strawberry-flavored ice cream that was thrown up because he wanted to hit Black Elia. Then, he put it in front of Black Elia again. "You're just an elementary school student. Don't pretend to be seductive in front of me. You're still 10 years away from that body of yours." Wuming teased. "I want Big Brother to feed me." Hearing Wuming's words, Black Elia threw a tantrum. Wuming smiled helplessly, then put the ice cream in front of Black Elia's mouth. "Ah!" Black Elia took a big bite of the ice cream, as if the ice cream was Wuming. "Speaking of which, I can't call you Elia. It's easy to confuse you with the other Elia. How about I call you Black Elia?" After all, Black Elia's skin was much darker than Elia's. Elia's skin was snow white, while Black Elia's skin was a healthy dark color. Big Brother is so annoying. "Isn't Black Elia like a puppy?" Black Elia said unhappily. Then, Black Elia's eyes lit up and she looked at Wuming with a smile. "I've thought about it. My name will be Chloe." "Chloe?" "Yes, Chloe von Erzberin." Chapter 252. Wuming looked at Chloe with a different gaze. Names were especially important things. Whether it was the true name of a follower, a word spirit based on a name, or a technique to curse others, a name was indispensable. Blackie gave herself a name, which meant that she didn't want to become Ilya or a substitute for Ilya. Instead, she wanted to become a person with a true meaning of existence. Well, but I can also specially allow Big Brother to call me Blackie. Blackie smiled and then took another bite of ice cream, revealing a happy expression. It's delicious. So Ilya wasn't wrong. Eating ice cream is this kind of enjoyment. Blackie couldn't taste the deliciousness before. Wyrm asked with some heartache. If that was the case, then it was indeed a bit too much for Blackie. As expected, Big Brother already knows about me. Now, there's a secret between Big Brother and me that even Ilya doesn't have. Blackie said with a grin. Wyrm released his hand that was feeding Blackie the ice cream. The ice cream floated in the air as though a floating magic spell was cast. Then, Wyrm placed his hand on Blackie's head and gently stroked it. It's been hard on you, Blackie. Wyrm, who already knew everything, was qualified to say this. Then, will Big Brother who knows everything stop me? Blackie looked at Wyrm's eyes. Of course. Wyrm said without hesitation. Then, Big Brother is my enemy. Xiaohei looked at Wyrm firmly and said in a tone that would not allow him to go back on his words. Now, the atmosphere became a bit silent. However, grumble grumble grumble. The sound of a hungry stomach sounded and the silent atmosphere was broken. At this moment, Blackie and Wyrm were both stunned. Wyrm looked at Blackie's stomach with a polite smile and said, "You probably haven't eaten since yesterday." Although Blackie was similar to a follower of a job class card, it was still half of Ilya's body. It was just relying on the archer job class card, so it naturally needed to eat. But after all, little Black was all alone. Not to mention a place to stay, he didn't even have money. How was he going to eat? Blackie nodded. After all, I don't have money, and I don't have a place to stay. Last night, I even spent it on the park bench that you were sitting on. Xiaohei said in a lonely voice. It's my fault. You didn't have to run away yesterday. I wouldn't have done anything to you. It's my fault for not stopping you. Wyrm said as he let go of the ice cream in his other hand. The ice cream floated in the air like the previous ice cream. Then, Wyrm gently patted Wyrm's head. Let's go. I'll make it up to you today. You can eat whatever you want. Really? Big Brother is the best. Xiaohei happily jumped into Wyrm's arms. Wyrm patted Xiaohei's head and was even more determined to let Xiaohei live a peaceful life. In the next half a day, Wyrm took Xiaohei to eat almost all the famous food in Winterwood City. Then, Wyrm took Xiaohei to the amusement park and had a good time. As for Xiaohei's clothes, Xiaohei easily used magic to project his clothes into home clothes. When it was almost late, Wyrm took Xiaohei back to Shuoyu's house. Are you happy today, Xiaohei? Wyrm held Xiaohei's hand and smiled gently. Yes, I'm really happy with Big Brother. At this time, Xiaohei didn't look like the person who threatened to kill her. Then, I'll make you a delicious dinner when we get home. Wyrm tightly held Xiaohei's hand. Big Brother brought me home to stop me from getting rid of Ilya. Big Brother is really cunning. He actually set a trap for me here. Xiaohei felt that she couldn't pull her hand away and said gloomily. The two who were originally walking stopped. To be precise, it was Xiaohei who stopped. Wyrm also stopped. Xiaohei, I'm not stopping you. I'm protecting you. Wyrm turned around and squatted down, looking at the unhappy Xiaohei and said. Even if you took away 2/3 of Ilya's magic circuit and greatly reduced her strength, you still can't underestimate her. After all, Ilya has the help of Meiyu, Rin Enbin, and Livia. Trifling magical girls, as long as I snatch their stellar magic staff, they will be completely useless. Xiaohei said, somewhat unconvinced. As for those two idiots, I don't think they can pose any threat to me. Looking at Xiaohei, who was like a proud little black cat, Wyrm smiled and shook his head. You can't underestimate them. No matter what, they are also experienced magicians. Magicians who can survive in the magic world can't be underestimated, including the somewhat silly-looking Rin Enben and Luvia. Although they are sometimes unreliable, if you underestimate them, you will suffer a big loss. After all, the fact that the two idiots could survive in the magic world can be said to be a miracle in itself. Cough cough, then I really have to thank Big Brother for reminding me. After saying that, Xiao He instantly disappeared in front of Wu Ming. Space teleportation. Wu Ming's eyes widened. The disappeared Xiao He appeared on a wall near Wu Ming. How did you do it? I don't remember that, Archer, being able to teleport. Wu Ming looked at the proud Xiao He and asked curiously. Wu Ming wanted to leave Big Brother, so I was able to do this. Xiao He's words made Wu Ming a little concerned. Could it be Xiao He's original characteristic? Wu Ming thought in his heart. I didn't expect Xiao He to be able to do this, it's really impressive. Wu Ming pretended to be helpless and said. Big Brother, you must be planning something, I won't be fooled again. After saying that, Xiao He was about to leave. But, clatter. The sound of chains came from all around Xiao He. The moment Xiao He was about to turn around, Xiao He was tied up. Big Brother, do you think this can stop me? Xiao He said with a smile, then began to gather magical power to use space teleportation. But, did you find that you can't use your magical power, Xiao He? Wu Ming said with a slight smile. Damn it. Big Brother, you're bullying me. Xiao He resisted. It couldn't be helped, who asked Enkidu to have evolved to the effect of sealing magical power. Xiao He, who had the skill Mind's Eye, pseudo, naturally noticed the incoming chains. Relying on his space teleportation, Xiao He didn't teleport away, but accepted the binding of Enkidu. In the end, Xiao He didn't know that Enkidu could seal magical power, so Xiao He was once again caught by Wu Ming. Just accept your fate. Wu Ming said with a smile, then carried Xiao He, who was bound by Enkidu, on his shoulder. Big Brother is a bad guy. Chapter 253. Shuasuki Residence. Ilya and the others came here after school because they received news from Wu Ming. Wu Ming and Little Black sat in the main seats while Ilya, Meiyu, Rin Enben, and Luvia sat around Wu Ming and Little Black, looking at Little Black as if they were looking at a monkey. At this moment, Little Black and Wu Ming were sitting together with a chain on their wrists. After all, Heavenlock, Enkidu, evolved from Enkidu's soul coiling around Wu Ming's arm. Naturally, it started from Wu Ming's arm. And Wu Ming used Heavenlock, Enkidu, to bind Little Black, so it was inevitable that the two of them would be bound together like in the picture. Taking a closer look, you really look exactly the same as Ilya. Rin Enben poked Little Black's cheeks and said curiously. I'm not a rare animal. Don't touch me like this, Little Black said unhappily. After all, she was forcefully kidnapped by Wu Ming. Of course, she would be unhappy. Apart from the color and tone, you are indeed exactly the same as Ilya, Luvia added. Come to think of it, I feel a little awkward looking at myself, Ilya said weakly. Are you alright, Ilya? Meiyu sniffed worriedly. During the day, Ilya's mind wandered more than once and was punished by the teacher. Thinking about it, it was actually quite simple. Ignoring the sudden appearance of Blackie's doppelganger, Ilya didn't have a good night's sleep after Wu Ming told her about the Ahrensburg family. Anyone would be concerned about such a situation. It would be a lie to say that I'm fine. I really miss the ordinary life of the past. At this moment, Little Black was a bit unhappy after hearing Ilya's words. In an instant, Little Black hugged Wu Ming's arm and kept rubbing against it. Big Brother, I don't have enough mana. Let's replenish it. Replenish mana. Rin Enben and Luvia exclaimed. Ilya and Meiyo's faces instantly turned red. After being told the meaning of mana replenishment, they became very shy. If Xiao He is really like a class card, then it really needs to be replenished. After all, the position of the class card is basically the position of the spiritual pulse. With the supply of mana from the spiritual pulse, the servant of the class card incarnation doesn't have to worry about the consumption of mana. Livia analyzed. No, I can't. I can't accept using my face to replenish my mana with Big Brother. Ilya said with a tone that sounded like she was about to cry. I don't think it's a good idea either, Mayu said in the smallest voice she had ever used since Wuming adopted Mayu. Wuming knocked on Little Hei's head. Heaven Lock, Enkidu, has sealed away all of your remaining mana. You now have enough mana to support it. Little Black became even more unhappy. This time, he turned his head especially hard. Don't let me find a chance, or I will definitely kill you, Ilya. Little Black said fiercely. However, Ilya was somewhat disappointed and lowered her head. Ilya, who knew a lot of things, could almost understand the reason why Little Black wanted to kill her. Little Black was probably the personality of the Little Holy Grail. This was what Ilya thought. Wuming touched Ilya's head to cheer her up, and then began to explain the complete story about Little Black. 10 years ago, in order to let their daughter grow up like an ordinary person, Ilya's parents sealed away the memories and abilities of the next Little Holy Grail. As an artificially created Little Holy Grail, Ilya had been instilled with all of the knowledge about the Holy Grail War by the House of Einstein barons since birth. After the Holy Grail War was sealed away forever, in order to let their daughter grow up healthily, Ilya's parents sealed away this portion of memories and abilities in Ilya's body. In the past 10 years, a new personality was successfully born. This personality absorbed the sealed memories and knowledge and watched Ilya's daily life from the perspective of a bystander. And because Ilya came into contact with magic, this seal began to weaken. It was only when Ilya received the backlash of the mana from the ley line and the mana fluctuations caused by Wuming's return that this seal was completely broken. Simply put, Little Black is case Ilya, right? Rin and Osaka pulled out a pair of glasses out of nowhere and put them on as he spoke with a serious expression. Although I don't want to admit this, it's the truth, Wuming said helplessly. It's just that this case automatically restarted during the process of being abandoned. That's what it means, Livia added. And the reason why Little Black wants to kill Ilya is to replace her and live an ordinary life? Mayu asked. Wuming shook his head. Maybe. It's just a simple imbalance in her heart. Hearing this, Little Black lowered her head. Wuming touched Little Black's head helplessly and began to speak. You're so negative already. This isn't the style of a big brother's little sister. Wuming teased Little Black half-jokingly. Hey, Little Black, do you know why I didn't hesitate to choose to stop your plan to kill Ilya? I don't know, and I don't want to know. In any case, I can't escape anymore. You can do whatever you want with me. Little Black said in despair. In response, Wuming waved his hand and stopped the few who wanted to say something. You're wrong if you think that way. Little Black, feel it now. I've already removed the Heaven Lock, Enkidu's restriction on mana. You can now use mana. Hearing Wuming's words, Little Black operated the magic circuit and found that she could really use mana. Big brother, you're so confident in me. Aren't you afraid that I'll find an opportunity to assassinate Ilya after escaping? When she said the 3 words Ilya, Little Black pretended to glare fiercely at Ilya. But even so, Little Black had no intention of using space teleportation to escape. Listen to me, Little Black. Wuming removed the Heaven Lock, Enkidu, from Little Black. I stopped you from killing Ilya because she's my younger sister, so I have to protect her. But at the same time, as Ilya's Little Black, you're also my younger sister. Thus, I have to save you. Wuming looked at Little Black with a firm gaze. Wuming was also moved by Little Black's seriousness. At this time, Ilya also opened her mouth. I'm really sorry, Little Black. Ilya sat down on the ground and faced Little Black. I know about the House of Einstein barons. Although I don't know how long you've been in my body and I don't know about the sufferings you've experienced, you still suffered because of me. No matter what, I have to bear a certain amount of responsibility. It could only be said that the girl who had experienced hardships had finally matured a little. Wuming looked at Ilya with gratification. The emotions in Little Black's eyes became even more obvious. After all, as Ilya's half-body, Little Black's character and moral character definitely wouldn't be bad. How about it, Little Black? Think about it. Wuming looked at Little Black with a smile. Little Black fell into contemplation. Chapter 254. Ilya raised her head and looked at Blackie. After a moment, Blackie spoke. Then, let me ask you a question, Ilya. What question? Ilya swallowed her saliva and asked nervously. What is your current wish? Blackie looked at Ilya with a serious expression. My current wish is probably to return to my previous life. I guess. Ilya was vexed as she pondered deeply before giving her answer. Wuming wasn't surprised when he heard this answer. After all, Ilya was just an ordinary primary school student. She was suddenly drawn into the life of a magician and this caused her to be exhausted. Just like how we would usually think, how good would it be if I didn't do that thing? But, hearing Ilya's answer, Blackie lowered his head gloomily. As expected, we can't coexist. In an instant, a large amount of magic power erupted from Blackie's body. What? Ilya said in a panic. Calm down, Blackie. Rin Enbin, who could only use his hand to shield his eyes due to Blackie's super high magic power eruption, advised. Luvia and Mayu were the same. In fact, Mayu showed signs of retreating, let alone Ilya who was just an ordinary person not long ago. Blackie, calm down. Wuming placed his hand on Blackie's shoulder. It had to be said that Wuming, who was the closest to Blackie, wasn't affected at all. Although he was still angry, Blackie didn't want to disappoint his big brother's trust in him, so he tried his best to retract his magic power. Wuming believed that Blackie wouldn't casually use his magic power to deal with Ilya, so he removed Enkidu. Blackie didn't want to disappoint Wuming. Blackie shifted his position angrily and leaned closer to Wuming. At the same time, he turned his head to the side and stopped looking at Ilya. Wuming smiled and patted Blackie's head, indicating that Blackie didn't let him down. Blackie puffed out his chest proudly. Then, Wuming looked at Ilya. Ilya, although I know that you didn't mean to say what you just said, do you know what it means? Looking at the serious Wuming, Ilya didn't know what to do. You want to return to your previous life because you realize that the world of magicians is abnormally chaotic. But this also means that you want to deny our relationship because you only knew us after entering the world of magicians. To Xiao Hei, you are denying her existence. Rin Enbin and Luvia nodded in agreement with Wuming's words. Only Mayu didn't express anything, quietly listening to Wuming's speech. Wuming's words stunned Ilya, but she immediately reacted. No, big brother, Sister Mayu Lin, Sister Luvia, I didn't mean that. Ilya looked as if she was about to cry and looked at Xiao Hei pleadingly. I'm sorry, Xiao Hei, that's what I meant. Then, Ilya really started crying. I know that I'm very clumsy. I like to sleep in the morning and often can't get up. I'm also not proficient in cooking and often act rashly. Ilya was a little flustered. Of course, Xiao Hei's claim that only Wuming's mana could provide Xiao Hei with mana was wrong. In fact, with Xiao Hei's current mana, as long as she didn't use her mana in battle, it wouldn't be a problem to maintain her existence for a few days. But right now, Xiao Hei was indeed at a critical point. In addition to the mana explosion just now, if she were to fight again, she might directly disappear. Most importantly, Wuming said that Xiao Hei was his younger sister, so it wasn't a big deal for his younger sister to live with him. Alright, let Xiao Hei stay. She is indeed lacking in mana now. Wu Ming spoke up for Xiao He. Oh okay, but Xiao He, you can't mess around with Big Brother. Ilya was still a little worried. Although they had just met, Ilya could already feel Xiao He's mischievousness. That will depend on my mood. Ah, what a sly answer. Amid the noise, the Shuoyu residence returned to its happy time. Chapter 255. The next morning, Wu Ming took Little Black and Mei Yu from the Shuoyu residence to the Suigun Garden Academy. At this moment, Little Black, like Mei Yu, was wearing the uniform of the Suigun Garden Academy Primary School. This was Wu Ming's decision to let Little Black go to school. After all, Little Black could be very envious of Ilya's daily life. Wu Ming had long noticed this. As for the enrollment procedures, Wu Ming said that he knew some people in Winterwood City. Ahem, of course, Wu Ming's methods were all formal methods. Yes, that's right. Humph 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 humph, Little Black held Wu Ming's hand and hummed happily. Are you that happy, Little Black? Wu Ming asked. It's okay. I used to watch Ilya go to school in the third person. Now that I can experience it myself, it's inevitable that I'm a little excited. Then, have a good experience of school life, Wu Ming said with a smile. Yes, yes. I will cherish it, Big Brother, Little Black replied. At this moment, Wu Ming noticed that Mei Yu, who was holding his other hand, was a little absent-minded. What's wrong, Mei Yu? Wu Ming asked with concern. It's nothing, Brother Wu Ming. Mei Yu shook her head. Wu Ming smiled. You don't look fine at all. However, even if Mei Yu didn't say it, Wu Ming could more or less guess. It was nothing more than Little Black and Ilya's identity as the Holy Grail that touched Mei Yu. I will protect you. Whether it's you, Little Black, or Ilya, I have the strength to protect you now. Wu Ming let go of Mei Yu's hand and patted Mei Yu's head. Oh, Mei Yu is so cunning. Big Brother, I want it too. Little Black shook Wu Ming's hand and said coquettishly. Yes, yes, Wu Ming smiled helplessly, let go of Little Black's hand, and patted Little Black's head. At this moment, Wu Ming found that the three had already arrived at school. Then, Mei Yu, Little Black, see you in the afternoon. Wu Ming waved at the two. Yes, Brother Wu Ming, Big Brother, goodbye. After Wu Ming left, he took out his phone and made a phone call. Yes, yes, this is Einsteinberg, a lively female voice came from the other end of the phone. This is Wu Ming. Soon, Wu Ming made the call. Wu Ming returned to Shuoyu's house, opened Dragonist, and took out some precious items that Wu Ming collected over the years. The reason why Wu Ming did that was because Wu Ming was going to make an item in his magic workshop. Last night, Wu Ming transferred a lot of magical power to Little Black by entering Magician's avatar, and also cast a blessing on Little Black. However, no matter how long the blessing was, there was a time limit. After all, Little Black was still a servant, and it was a special kind of servant that consumed magical power all the time. Although Wu Ming and Little Black could sign a contract, and Little Black's magical power was provided by Wu Ming thought of a way to solve the problem. That was, to make an item that could automatically generate magical power, turn it into an organ similar to a magic circuit, and implant it into Little Black's body. In this way, Little Black would naturally be free. It took almost 2 or 3 hours. Wu Ming had a stone full of Lune runes in his hand. Fortunately, this body is a caster, magician, class, and it has the skill, item creation, and I have your help, Kalis. Otherwise, it will take me a few days to complete this item. At this time, Kalis turned into a dragon horn crown with wings and floated beside Wu Ming. No, Master, with your wisdom, even without me, you can complete it in a short time. Ha ha ha, you think too highly of me, Kelly. I do have wisdom, but compared to you, I'm still far behind. The magic attire made by Zelik should not be underestimated. Ruby and Sapphire could instantly turn an elementary school student into a magical girl who could easily suppress a first-class magician, which was enough to show the power of the magic attire made by Zelik. As a magic attire made by Zelik for Wuming, Kalas's value was even higher than ruby and sapphire. After all, ruby and sapphire were used for battle, and Kelly was a special accessory. Moreover, Kelly had evolved into a silent noble phantasm, so she was no longer in the category of accessories. Seriously speaking, Kelly could now be considered as an elf. There's still some time before Ilya and the others finish school, just enough time to prepare for the parallel world. The parallel world that Wuming mentioned was naturally Julian and the black mud born from the root. Wuming came to the door of the room in the center of the Shuoyu mansion. This room was just an ordinary bedroom, but Wuming stretched out his hand and muttered something. Then, the door of the room opened automatically, revealing a futuristic-looking control room. However, the color of the control room was stone-colored, as if it was some ancient technology. This was a place that even Meiyu didn't know about. Wuming used spatial technology to superimpose a layer of space on the foundation of the original room. This layer of space was used as the control room of the Shuoyu mansion. A magician's magic workshop generally had various traps that increased the owner's attack power and weakened the enemy. As Wuming's magic workshop, the Shuoyu mansion was naturally not ordinary. As early as when Wuming built this magic workshop, Wuming began to build this control room. Wuming was not the kind of person who would not fight back after being beaten. Wuming set up this magic workshop for offense, not defense. There was a large platform in the center of the control room, and at the edge of the control room were unknown instruments. The upper limit was clearly engraved with lines. Inside the control room, Wuming took out the staff of Ain's Ol-On and the nameless spellbook. Wuming placed the staff of Ain's Ol-On in a long transparent cylinder, and the staff of Ain's Ol-On floated up. The nameless spellbook was placed by Wuming in a groove of a control panel. Then, Wuming sat on a platform in the center of the control room. This platform was similar to a sacrificial altar, and Wuming designed it to control the entire magic workshop with thought. After Wuming sat on the platform, he connected a line to his wrist, and a large amount of magic was transmitted to the control room. The whole control room began to operate on its own as if it had come over. The 7 gems on the staff of Ain's oral gown began to light up, and the entire staff began to glow with a myriad of colors. The nameless spellbook turned pages automatically, and countless words emerged from it and were absorbed by the lines on the control panel. Wuming used the staff of Ain's Ol-On as a key to store the countless high-level spells in the nameless spellbook into the Shuoyu mansion, turning it into a cannon that could release countless high-level spells. Most of the magic transmitted was stored. After all, it was impossible to release countless high-level spells without the support of magic. This mobile cannon would become terrifying under the control of Wuming in the future. Chapter 256. In the beginning, Wuming also wanted to equip the Shuoyu residence with an engine with infinite magic power, which could provide infinite magic power for the casting of magic. However, Wuming really could not make a device that could instantly extract and provide almost infinite magic power. The reason why he could make the so-called infinite magic power device for Little Black was only because the device would restore magic power to Little Black bit by bit. Simply put, it was the same as an ordinary magic circuit, storing magic power and slowly and automatically recovering it. The magic power supply device needed by the Shuoyu residents needed to extract unimaginable magic power in an instant. If it was a device that slowly and automatically recovered magic power, the Shuoyu residence was naturally equipped with it. However, there was no magic power device that could instantly produce unimaginable magic power. It was like a faucet. The size of the faucet and the pipe related to the amount of water produced. If it was a very thin pipe and a very small faucet, then the amount of water produced would be pitifully small. If it was a large pipe that was a few meters thick and a large faucet with a diameter that was also a few meters, the amount of water produced would definitely be much more. In Wuming's current view, the so-called magic power perpetual motion machine that could provide infinite magic power was only Wuming himself. As the root dragon, Wuming's magic power could be said to be infinite. The reason for this was that Wuming's magic power was really too much. Magic power recovery was far greater than magic power use, so Wuming had never worried about magic power issues. In short, Wuming could not make a device that provided infinite magic power. Therefore, Wuming came here whenever he was free and constantly stored magic power in the Shuoyue Residence's magic power warehouse. With the staff of Ain's Olgaun as the key, the nameless spellbook as the attack text, and Wuming's infinite magic power as the driving force, this constructed a mobile, high firepower, infinite magic power turret. It was almost time for the elementary school of the Sui Kun Garden Academy to be dismissed. Wuming stopped the infusion of magic power, removed the wires on his arm, walked down the altar, and left the room. Wuming kept the brilliance of Ain's Oalgo and the nameless spellbook. Previously, Wuming had always been here, but when Wuming left, he took the two treasures away. The scene changed, and Wuming drove to the entrance of Sui Kun Yuan Primary School. After a few minutes, the school bell rang. Looking at the children coming out one after another, Wuming began to miss them. At this time, Wuming saw Ilya and the others come out. However, the situation was not looking good. Ilya looked at Little Black angrily, while Little Black had a happy smile on his face. Meiyu sighed helplessly at the side. Needless to say, Xiaohei must have provoked Ilya on purpose. Although Wuming and Blackie had only been together for a few days, Wuming understood Blackie's mischievous nature very well. Wuming helplessly shook his head. Wuming opened the door, got out of the car, and walked towards Ilya and the others. From afar, Blackie discovered Wuming. "Big brother." Blackie waved his small hand and ran towards Wuming. "Ah! It's Big brother, Blackie, don't run." Ilya also discovered Wuming, but after seeing Blackie run away, she immediately chased after him. "Really?" Meiyu helplessly smiled and then ran after him. "Big brother, Blackie missed you so much. Blackie can't wait to replenish his mana. Let's start now." Blackie hugged Wuming and rubbed against Wuming's chest. Then, he said something that made Ilya furious. "No, no, no. Blackie, how can you be so unrestrained? Even if you want to replenish your mana, you can't do it on the streets." Ilya's face was flushed red. She instantly pounced on Wuming and stopped Blackie. "Woo! Brother Wuming." Meiyu ran over. She did not even have time to catch her breath. "Yo, Meiyu." Wuming greeted Meiyu. Then, Wuming pulled Blackie and Ilya, who were lying on his body, away and squatted down. "Alright, it's time to go home. I drove here today." Blackie was excited again. "Then, I want to sit in the front passenger seat." Blackie raised his small hand and said excitedly. "Damn it, Blackie is so cunning. I want to sit in the front passenger seat too." Ilya fought for him. "Humph. I said it first. I want to sit in the front passenger seat." "I don't want to." Wuming smiled helplessly. Then, he pulled Meiyu's hand. "Meiyu will sit in the front passenger seat today." "Huh?" Meiyu was shocked. "Why is it like this?" Ilya said with some regret. "As expected, Meiyu is the difficulty in getting Big brother," Blackie said helplessly. "Get me? What are you guys up to now?" Wuming pretended to be serious as he looked at Ilya and Blackie. It's fine, it's fine. Let's go, Big brother." That's right. It's better to go home quickly." Blackie and Ilya echoed each other. Wuming flicked Blackie and Ilya's foreheads. Ignoring Blackie and Ilya's screams, Wuming pulled Meiyu toward the car. On the road, Wuming sat in the driver's seat and drove the car steadily. Meiyu sat in the front passenger seat with a calm expression. Xiaohei and Ilya, on the other hand, sat obediently in the back row, looking like obedient girls. "Later, Ilya will stay at my house and accompany Meiyu. I need to do something with Blackie later. I've already spoken to Sarah for you." "Huh? So sudden." "I understand." Although Ilya was somewhat puzzled, she still nodded obediently. Mayu, I've already prepared the meal. I've already used magic to keep it warm. You and Ilya can eat directly after you go back. There's no need to wait for us, Wuming said to Mayu without turning his head. I understand, brother Wuming. Mayu nodded her little head. Big brother, what are you bringing me to do? It can't be something embarrassing, right? Blackie pretended to be shy as she touched her face. How could it be? Big brother isn't that kind of person. Also, don't do these shameful actions again. Ilya blushed again because of Little Black. I won't. Ah. Soon, accompanied by Ilya's helpless screams and Black's smug laughter, Wuming drove to the Shuayu residence. Then, we'll be leaving first, Wuming said to Mayu and Ilya who got out of the car. Okay. Goodbye, brother Wuming. Big brother, be careful on the road. Wuming waved his hand and started the car. Then, where are you bringing me, big brother? Blackie sat in the front passenger seat and became serious. To see someone who's rather special to you, Blackie. Chapter 257. Wuming brought Little Black to a small park near the school. At this moment, it was evening. For some reason, there was almost no one around. Wuming got out of the car and held Little Black's hand. Is the important person Big Brother mentioned here? Little Black looked up with a puzzled expression. However, Wuming did not answer Little Black's question. After walking a few steps, Wuming stopped. At the same time, Little Black, who was being held, also stopped. We're here. Little Black looked ahead. A noble lady with long snow-white hair was standing under the setting sun, waiting quietly. Just like when she saw Wuming and Little Black, the noble lady looked over and smiled. Liar, liar. Why are you here? Mother. That's right. Standing in the small park and waiting quietly was Little Black's mother, also Ilya's mother, Alice Phil von Erzburen. It's mother, Ilya. No, it's Chloe-chan, Alice Field greeted Xiaohei with a smile. Blackie was at a loss of what to do. It was as if its legs were rooted to the ground and could not move. Why? Why is mother here? Little Black was at a loss as he spoke. It's because Mr. Wuming called me. Only then did I know that so many things had happened to my daughter, Alice Phil said as she walked toward Wuming and Little Black step by step. Big brother. Little Black looked at Wuming with a wronged expression. Wuming patted Little Black's head, then gave Little Black's hand to him. After all, your real home is not here, Little Black. Also, you've always wanted to see your mother. Big brother, Wuming looked at Little Black with an encouraging gaze. Then, Little Black nodded silently and looked at Alice Phil who was walking over. Wuming left the small park and returned to the car, giving the mother and daughter some space. Through the car window, Wuming looked at Little Black who had begun to cry and Alice Phil who was comforting Little Black and wiping her tears. As early as noon, Wuming had set up a spell to disperse idle people here. Therefore, Wuming was not worried that someone would barge in and ruin the atmosphere between Little Black and Alice Phil. At noon, Wuming found Alice Phil's phone number from the information he asked from Zelik and called her. Then, Wuming told Alice Field about what had happened to Ilya during this time. Although Alice Field expressed that she was surprised, Wuming didn't believe that Alice Field didn't know about his daughter's situation during this time. As early as 10 years ago, the House of Einstein Baron's family had disappeared, that was what he told Wuming. The House of Einstein Baron's family has disappeared. Wuming could more or less guess. It was nothing more than being eliminated by her parents who wanted to protect Ilya through some means. The seal of the Holy Grail War was probably also facilitated by Ilya's parents. Wuming expressed that he wanted Little Black to meet Alice Phil, and Alice Phil readily agreed. As a result, the previous scene appeared. Little Black seemed to be relieved and gave up the idea of getting rid of Ilya, but that was only because Wuming was here. From the moment Little Black was born, her meaning was denied. Until now, the reason why Little Black wanted to kill Ilya was because Little Black was unwilling. Why can she have a family, but I can't? Why can she have friends, but I can't? Why can she have the right to enjoy daily life, but I can't? Why can she be loved by Big Brother, but I can't? This was Little Black's unwillingness. Now, Little Black already had family, friends, daily life, and even Wuming's love. However, maternal love was the only thing that Wuming couldn't give, and maternal love was what Little Black lacked the most. Through the car window, Wuming saw that Little Black had already thrown herself into Alice Phil's arms and was crying. Alice Phil patted Little Black's back. It seemed that Little Black and Alice Phil had reconciled. Now, the breath that Little Black held in her heart had been released. Looking at the mother and daughter hugging each other, Wuming couldn't help but think of Meiyu. Wuming took out his phone and dialed Meiyu's number. "Brother Wuming?" Meiyu's puzzled voice came from the other end of the phone. Wuming vaguely heard Ilya's voice asking, "Is that Big Brother?" Meiyu, "No, it's fine. Let's go see the sea this weekend, just the two of us." There was a rush of breathing from the other end of the phone. Then, a joyful voice came from the other end of the phone. "Okay." At night, Wuming drove back to the Shuoyu residence alone. Little Black, who was relieved with Alice Phil, had already gone home with Alice Phil. This was also the reason why Wuming let Ilya stay in his house. Let Little Black enjoy maternal love alone tonight. After getting out of the car, Wuming pushed open the door of the Shuoyu residence and walked in. As soon as Wuming entered, he saw Meiyu sitting alone on the side edge looking at the moon. "Meiyu, why aren't you sleeping yet?" Wuming walked to the side edge and sat beside Meiyu. "I want to sleep with Brother Wuming tonight," Meiyu said with a slightly red face. In response, Wuming smiled and patted Meiyu's head. "Then let's do it together." "Okay." Meiyu smiled. Her smile was very beautiful. Now, the depression in Meiyu's heart for the past few days was also vented. The next day, at the entrance of the primary school of the Sui Garden Academy. "Hey hey hey." Ilya's surprised voice came. Wuming held Meiyu and Ilya's hand. Opposite him was Alice Phil and Little Black, who was holding Alice Phil's hand. At this moment, Little Black's face was filled with a smug smile as she looked at Ilya. "Long time no see, Ilya-chan," Alice Phil greeted Ilya happily. "Mom. Why is Mom here? When did you come back?" Also, why was Little Black sent to school by Mom? Ilya said with some jealousy. "That's because I'm Mom's real daughter. Ilya is just a little girl that everyone dotes on." Little Black began to tease Ilya again. "I still have Big Brother. Big Brother came to send me off today," Ilya said, unwilling to admit defeat. "Oh, is that so? Isn't Big Brother sending Meiyu off and also sending you off?" Little Black narrowed her eyes and looked at Ilya. "Hey! This was Meiyu who was innocently dragged into this." "No way, Little Black is an idiot." Accompanied by the noise, the three entered the school together. "Thank you very much, Mr. Wuming." Alice Phil bowed to Wuming to express her gratitude. Wuming waved his hand. "Madam, you don't have to do this. Whether it's Little Black or Ilya, they are the same as Meiyu. They are all my sisters. This is what I should do. Also, even if I call you, you will come back, right?" Then, Wuming turned and left. "You're right, Mr. Hyunryong. I'll be counting on you from now on." Wuming stretched out a hand and waved without saying anything. Chapter 258. After a few days, Rin and Osaka and Luvia confirmed that Little Black was harmless, and Rin and Osaka resumed his inspection of the ley line. After all, his initial goal was to infuse mana into the ley line to detect any abnormalities. After infusing mana, Wu Ming's return and the backlash from the ley line's mana caused Little Black to appear. Now was the time to solve the ley line problem. Rin and Osaka found Wu Ming and wanted him to accompany him. How should I put it? After all, you're the most capable one among us. It's safer with you around. These were Rin and Osaka's exact words. Wu Ming wasn't too interested in this, but if there was a problem with the ley line, he would have to spend money, and Winterwood City wouldn't have it easy. Therefore, Wu Ming followed Rin and Osaka to the big hole in Yuzhang Mountain. Fortunately, the previous collapse only buried the entrance, and the interior wasn't too damaged. After clearing the entrance, Wu Ming and Rin and Osaka entered the big hole without much trouble. After choosing the location, Rin and Osaka set up a series of instruments and began to inspect the ley line. After chanting a series of incantations, Rin Enbin tossed a burning gem onto a piece of parchment that was placed on a rack. In an instant, the parchment began to burn in a regular pattern from where the gemstone had fallen. A strange map appeared. It was a plain map of Winterwood City's ley line. What? Rin and Osaka said in disbelief. Wu Ming walked over to take a look, and found that on the thickest ley line, there was a small square flaw. Is that the mirror realm? Wu Ming said uncertainly. Yes, without a doubt, this is the mirror realm of the class card. Rin and Osaka said solemnly. The 9th class card. Wu Ming said thoughtfully. Logically speaking, that class card shouldn't exist. Shiro Amiya from Mayo's world used 7 class cards to send Mayu to this world. Including Wu Ming, there were a total of 8 class cards. From what Wu Ming knew, there were 9 class cards created by Ainsworth. King Arthur's Saber, Cuculin's Lancer, Hero King's Archer, Medusa's Rider, Demetrius's Caster, Hassan's Assassin, and Hercules and Lancelot's Berserker. Lancelot's card had always been kept by Sakura Madu. At that time, Sakura thought that the card given by Julian was Gilgamesh's card, so she didn't have time to use Lancelot's card before Shinji Madu knocked her unconscious. Shiro Amiya's card was originally a useless one. Because of an accident, it connected to the future heroic spirit on the heroic spirit throne, which was the heroic spirit that Shiro Amiya transformed into in a parallel world. The Holy Grail ritual only required 7 class cards, and Wu Ming himself was considered a stowaway. Therefore, Wu Ming really couldn't figure out why there was another class card. Well, with you as an extra caster class card, I'm almost used to having a few more class cards. Rin and Osaka said somewhat dispiritedly. Do you hate the trouble? Wu Ming said rather helplessly. Wu Ming could naturally see that the reason why Rin and Osaka was so dispirited was naturally because there was one more class card that needed to be recycled. That's for sure. Let's not talk about the Great Master's request for us to analyze the class cards. Even I don't have much confidence in this additional 9th card. Wu Ming also had a dignified look on his face. Rin and Osaka was right. This class card must have appeared around the time when other class cards appeared. So, after a month, this card had absorbed a lot of mana from the ley line, and its own strength was almost comparable to a real servant. If this class card was a first-class card, then it was likely to have evolved to the strength of a first-class servant. If Wu Ming's original body was here, Wu Ming naturally didn't need to be afraid. However, the current Wu Ming was just a clone of Wu Ming's original body that was projected in this world after the root fell asleep. Naturally, his strength was greatly weakened. As for the recycling of this class card, leave it to me. I don't need the help of you, including Ilya and the others. Rin and Osaka struggled a few times, and then he was relieved. That's right. Even the recycling of the previous class cards required your help. This time, even if we participate, I'm afraid we will only be a burden. Wu Ming smiled and then comforted Rin and Osaka. Don't be so pessimistic. I still know a little about the analysis of class cards, and I should be able to help you. Although Wu Ming could directly use his skills to create class cards, the class cards that he created had a time limit, and it must be a class card that had been analyzed before. Because of this, Wu Ming knew a little about the structure of class cards. It had to be said that Julian was really a rare genius in 100 years, or even 1,000 years. He modified the most basic replacement magic and made it extremely powerful. Even the power of heroic spirits could be replaced. Unfortunately, Julian was almost completely corroded by the black mud. Now, there was no hope for him. Really? You really know the structure of class cards? Rin Enosaka's eyes lit up as if he wanted to devour Wu Ming. He stared at Wu Ming covetously. I know a little. After the recycling of the last class card, I will help you analyze it. Wu Ming waved his hand to calm Rin Enosaka down. He. Actually, you only need to help me analyze it. You don't have to care about Livia. Rin Enosaka had a fawning expression. Let's talk about this later. Let's go back and tell Ilya and the others about the class cards problem and prepare for the recycling. As he spoke, Wu Ming began to walk toward the entrance of the big hole. I still think it's better not to tell Ilya and the others. With their personality, they definitely won't let you take the risk alone. Rin Enosaka followed behind Wu Ming and expressed his opinion. Wu Ming shook his head. Although that's the case, don't forget that with their observational skills, they'll definitely notice something abnormal. Ignoring Ilya for now, Meiyu is my younger sister. She's been with me for 5 years. She'll definitely notice anything that I do. Now that you mention it, it does seem to be the case. Rin Enosaka nodded. Then, Rin Enosaka asked again. Right, the class card's mirror world is deep underground. How are you going to go down? Do you need my and Livia's help? I'm going to use brute force. Brute force? Rin Enosaka was confused. Yes, we will use high-density magic to dig underground until we reach the mirror world. Rin Enosaka was speechless. Leave the opening of the tunnel to us. Rin Enosaka wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. As expected, heroic spirits were a bunch of weird existences. Chapter 259. Wu Ming and Rin Enbin went their separate ways. Wu Ming returned to the Shuoyu residence while Rin Enbin went to Livia's house to discuss the matter. As for Blackie, because he had a heart-to-heart talk with his mother, Alice Field, a few days ago, he moved out of Wu Ming's house and returned to his own home. Although Ilya still looked unhappy, anyone could tell that she was very happy. Wu Ming returned to the Shuoyu residence. As soon as he entered the house, he saw Meiyu looking at some photos with great interest. They were photos taken a few days ago when Wu Ming and Meiyu went to the beach together. They were basically photos of Wu Ming and Meiyu. As for who took the photos, it was naturally Collis. You've been looking at them for a few days. Haven't you seen enough? Wu Ming realized that Meiyu did not notice Wu Ming and hugged Meiyu from behind. Ah! Meiyu let out a cute cry. It's brother Wu Ming. Don't scare me. Meiyu blushed and looked at Wu Ming with some resentment. Meiyu, Sama was too engrossed in the photos and didn't notice Wu Ming, Sama's arrival. Sapphire explained. Wu Ming let go of Meiyu and sat beside Meiyu. He patted Meiyu's head. Don't be too attached to these photos. This kind of life will continue. I will also often look at the sea with you. So, you must always let me see Meiyu's smile. I know, brother Wu Ming. Meiyu smiled and enjoyed Wu Ming's patting. Suddenly, Wu Ming's phone rang. Wu Ming picked up the phone and heard Rin Enbin's voice. There's an enemy attack. Something happened to Livia. What's wrong, brother Wu Ming? Meiyu looked at the serious Wu Ming and asked. Something happened to Livia's house. Something happened. Moving forward in the timeline, Rin Enbin, who had parted ways with Wu Ming, arrived at Livia's house and instantly realized that something was wrong. Livia's house was set up with a barrier. As long as one was outside the barrier, no matter how one looked, the interior would not change. As a first-rate magician, Rin Enbin was naturally able to detect a trace of mana emanating from the barrier at such a close distance. He pushed the door open and walked in. A series of explosions and sounds of fighting came out of the mansion. Damn, there really is an enemy attack. Then, Rin Enbin took out his phone and called Wu Ming. There's an enemy attack. Something happened to Luvia. With that, Rin Enosaka hung up the phone and rushed into the house. As soon as he entered the house, Rin Enbin noticed that the battle was happening in the living room. Therefore, Rin Enbin entered the mansion through another small door. Then, Rin Enbin came to the living room and saw the battle through the side door. Luvia was standing in a corner, looking at a purple-haired tomboy with a serious expression. The tomboy was fighting with a white-haired, white-bearded, and bespectacled old man wearing a steward's uniform. Wu Ming had seen this old man before. He was Luvia's steward, Ogiest. The tomboy was Bazette, who wanted to take back Wu Ming's rank card. Damn, why did it have to be this guy? If it wasn't for Wu Ming, I don't think all of us could beat her. Rin Enbin said in frustration. He then took out a few gems and threw them at Bazette's back. In an instant, a large explosion occurred. Although they couldn't beat Bazette even if they worked together, Rin Enbin didn't want to beat Bazette. After all, Rin Enbin had already notified Wu Ming. As long as we can delay until Wu Ming arrives, it'll be our victory. With this thought in mind, Rin Enbin tossed a few more gems into the smoke of the explosion. Another explosion occurred. Rin Enbin. Why did you come out? Looking at Rin Enbin who appeared to attack Bazette, Luvia said with some annoyance. I've already notified Wu Ming. He'll be here soon. Rin Enbin took out a few more gems and prepared to shoot them at Bazette. Wu Ming. You guys are quite confident in this person. Although I don't know who this person is, and I don't know if he has the ability to defeat me, you don't have to worry about that, because... Bazette's voice pierced through the smoke. Bazette waved his hand and a gust of wind blew the smoke away. I can defeat all of you before he arrives. TSK. Looks like he's going to use his true strength. Be careful, Luvia. Rin Enbin said with a frown. Of course, I know. You better take care of yourself. Rin Enbin. Luvia also had a serious expression on her face. However, she didn't forget to bicker with Rin Tozaka during the battle. This wasn't something to be praised. Immediately after, Luvia, Ogiest, and Rin Enbin surrounded Bazette and started a 3 versus 1 battle, but they were suppressed instead. Wu Ming opened the teleportation door and brought Mei Yu and Sapphire to Luvia's house. Coincidentally, Ilya, Blackie, and Ruby also arrived at Luvia's house. Ilya, Blackie, did you guys also receive a call from Sister Rin? Mei Yu asked when she saw her friends. Ilya and Blackie shook their heads. We just heard an explosion in Sister Luvia's house, so Ruby, Blackie, and I came out. Did Big Brother and Mei Yu get called over by Sister Rin? Ilya answered Mei Yu's doubts and asked a question while she was at it. Well, Sister Rin just called Brother Wu Ming, saying that there are enemies attacking. Luvia and Brother Wu Ming directly used Brother Wu Ming's magic teleportation door to bring Sapphire and me here. Mei Yu said with some fear. Because Mei Yu had never experienced a teleportation door, so when Mei Yu entered the teleportation door, she felt a bit uncomfortable with the teleportation door's black hole. Let's go in quickly. Wu Ming was a bit worried about Rin Enbin and Luvia's safety. Enemies that could make Rin Enbin send out a distress signal, whether the two of them could hold on was another matter. Ilya and the others also nodded. Then, Wu Ming pushed open the big iron door and walked in. The glass on the lower floor was completely shattered, and it looked like a villa that had been attacked by terrorists. Boom! A terrifying loud sound came from the villa. Fear the one with wings. Evil people and powerful people are all afraid of me who have wings. My wings will bring you a curse. Evil people can't hit me. Wu Ming chanted the words of the Phoenix incarnation. Following a burst of illusory body, the afterimage left behind on the spot gradually disappeared. Wu Ming disappeared in front of Ilya and the others. This was a phenomenon of excessive speed. Ilya, Mayu, Blackie, I'll go in first. The three of you be careful. At this time, Wu Ming's voice came from the void. So fast. This was what the three of them were thinking. Chapter 260. Wu Ming activated lightning speed and instantly arrived at the villa's living room. As soon as he entered the hall, what entered Wu Ming's eyes was a dilapidated scene. Livia's butler, Ogiest, was knocked unconscious and leaned against a sunken wall. Livia was held by the neck by Bazette and hung up. Rin Enosaka was lying on the ground, but from the expression on his face, it could be seen that Rin Enosaka had been trying to stand up. Seeing Wu Ming came, Rin Enosaka simply gave up the idea of standing up. Really, you finally came, we almost couldn't hold on. Rin Enosaka was lying face down on the ground, his voice was muffled. What do you mean almost couldn't hold on? We couldn't hold on. It's all your fault, Rin Enosaka, why did you come out so early? Maybe we could have held on a little longer. Livia was held by the neck and weakly complained. Seeing you guys so energetic, I really don't know why I rushed here. Seeing Rin Enosaka and Livia still so energetic, Wu Ming waved his hand with a slight smile. Then, Wu Ming looked at Bazette rather seriously. So, Bazette, you can let go now. Bazette immediately let go of Livia and faced Wu Ming in a serious posture. Ever since Wu Ming's arrival, Bazette's entire body tensed up. After Wu Ming saw that the enemy was Bazette, he could almost guess what was going on. It was nothing more than some small tricks from the clock tower's higher-ups. For these higher-ups, Wu Ming decided to go back and have a chat with them. Didn't they like heroic spirits and servants? Wu Ming will let them like it. For Bazette, the enemy in front of him was the Wu Ming that Rin Enosaka and Livia spoke of. Although he didn't know why this servant appeared here, and he didn't know why it had such a good relationship with Rin Enben and the others, it didn't prevent Bazette from knowing that Wu Ming was an enemy. However, to Wu Ming, there was nothing to fear from Bazette. As long as Bazette was not allowed to use the backlight sword, he would not be a threat to Wu Ming at all. Wu Ming wasn't a sure kill method, but he had plenty of methods. No matter how bad it was, he could still use force to subdue Bazette. I almost forgot that I didn't tell you my name. For you, the name Wu Ming might not be enough for you to remember. Wu Ming looked at the unusually vigilant Bazette and smiled. Just as he was about to introduce himself, Bazette interrupted him. The great sage who taught the most ancient king, the Yura Qianryong. Bazette's eyes shone. Wu Ming was a little surprised. I didn't expect that after a short period of contact, you could actually guess my real name. This is worthy of praise, but... Wu Ming's magical powers suddenly erupted, and the originally broken floor directly turned into powder. A large number of Lune runes quickly wrapped around Wu Ming's body. This was Wu Ming using Lune runes to strengthen himself. His master, Skaha, often did this because it was more convenient. Bazette, who had a little knowledge of Lune runes, understood the meaning of these runes at a glance. All of them are power. Yes, Wu Ming used a large number of Lune runes that represented power to strengthen himself. For Bazette, who also used Lune runes to strengthen his hands, after a large number of Lune runes enhancement, Wu Ming's physical strength had reached an incredible level. For ordinary people, as long as they were touched, their body would instantly shatter. If it was a magician, although it's not as good as the giant incarnation, but I'll be gentle. If you are hit, your life or death is up to fate. Wu Ming finished and disappeared. In a flash, Wu Ming, who had not yet exited from the lightning speed state, instantly appeared behind Bazette. What? Bazette gritted his teeth and frowned. With such a fast speed, even she could only catch a trace of shadow. She only saw Wu Ming lightly throwing a punch, and the fist fell on Bazette's body. Bang! Bazette was heavily hit by Wuming and was directly hit out of the hall by Wuming. With Wuming as the center, the entire floor was completely shattered. Even Luvia's villa began to shake. The impact of Wuming's fist broke the supporting structure of Luvia's villa. If it wasn't for the magic protection of Luvia's house and Wuming's deliberate mercy, Luvia's villa would have collapsed. Wuming put the Phoenix Incarnation and the Enhanced Strength Lune runes in contact, and then picked up 3 stones from the ground. Wuming's hand gently touched the stones, and 3 Lune runes full of vitality were engraved on the stones. Wuming threw 2 stones to Luvia, who was weak but could still stand. Luvia hurriedly caught the stones and looked at Wuming in confusion. These are the Lune runes that represent life. You can use them by injecting magic into them. You can use one first, and the other one is for Ogiest. Thank you, Wuming, Luvia said sincerely. Wuming was a little surprised. I didn't expect Miss to have such a frank side. After all, Luvia could be very arrogant. It was difficult for her to say a word of thanks. The people of the Eiderfelt family naturally repay kindness. As the next head of the Eiderfelt family, I naturally can't disgrace the family. Luvia instantly became arrogant again. After thanking him, Luvia walked toward Ogiest. Ogiest had been in close combat with Bazette, so he had suffered a lot of damage. Compared to Luvia, who could still move, Ogiest, who had fainted, undoubtedly needed it the most. Wuming didn't care about her and walked toward Rin Enbin. You finally came. I can only say that you're worthy of being called you. You can even subdue a monster that can fight a servant. Although Rin Enbin said weakly, Wuming could sense that although Rin Enbin's body was seriously injured, his magic was still sufficient. His inability to stand was only caused by physical injuries. You heard what I said to Luvia just now. Hurry up and use it. Wuming said as he handed the stone engraved with Lune runes to Rin Enbin. I got it. You should go take a look at Bazette first. That guy is known as a monster. Maybe he's still alive and kicking. Although Wuming deliberately showed mercy, Wuming's punch was not that easy to take. Wuming estimated that Bazette might be paralyzed on the ground now. Yes, I know, Miss Rin. However, because of Rin Enbin's eagerness, Wuming prepared to go and see. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.